Simon & Schuster Audio Originals presents This is a Safe Space, a Thriller by Lucinda Berry. Performed by Danielle Savory, with Alicia Crowder, Dan Bittner, Matt Godfrey, and Janina Edwards.
Chapter 1.
What's the emergency?
It's about time. What's the point of texting 911 if you don't respond?
I'm in the middle of a meeting with Derek. This better be an actual emergency.
It is. She keyed her car. That bitch keyed Phoenix's car.
What are you talking about?
Phoenix went to Target today and came out, and her car was all messed up. She's dangerous. I told you.
Calm down. I know how you get. You don't know it was her? People do messed up things to strangers all the time. Maybe her car got randomly keyed? You're just being paranoid.
Really? How about the LC she carved into the passenger side?
LC? Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. A big-ass L and C right on the passenger side. I see you typing and deleting. Just say what you want to say.
It's going to be okay.
Are you for real right now? She knows who I actually am. And my wife. How am I supposed to calm down? You said I didn't have to worry about her. You said everything would be fine. That I was just being dramatic.
There's got to be a way to reason with her.
Reason with her? 8 calls today. 17 emails. 29 texts. Saying she's going to tell Phoenix everything. She's unhinged.
She's just upset.
Upset? This means she's been following my wife? You just think she's not dangerous because she's female.
I'm not having this argument with you again. I told you that last night.
How would you feel if she said she was going to tell Jenna?
There's nothing to tell Jenna.
Don't even try that shit. You're just as guilty as me.
Chapter 2. Jenna? Colton's voice cut in from the hallway, disrupting my snooping. I tossed his phone on the coffee table like it had burned me. I scrambled back on the couch, pulling my knees up to my chest and trying to act like I wasn't doing anything wrong, as if I hadn't just been violating his privacy. Again. Yeah, what's up? I asked. Did I sound as fake to him as I did to myself? My head's throbbing and I thought a Diet Coke would help, but it hasn't. I looked for the Tylenol, but I couldn't find it anywhere. He gave me a pathetic smile as he came into the family room carrying a big bowl of popcorn lathered in butter, just the way we liked it. Do you know where it is? Guilt must be stamped all over my face. I jumped up before Colton could sit down or look at me. Don't worry, I'll run and find it for you. Normally, I'd be annoyed at his inability to find anything in our home and his expectation that I'd automatically know where it was. But not tonight. I leapt at the opportunity to get away and pull myself together. We didn't keep any medicine in the guest bathroom downstairs, so I hurried past him to the second-floor main bathroom, taking the stairs 2 at a time like it was an emergency. I shut the door behind me and I leaned against the cold wood. Panic gripped my chest. Not just from what I'd read, but because I wasn't supposed to be snooping in Colton's phone in the first place. That was a huge no-no. Top of the list in no longer tolerable behavior in our marriage contract. The one we'd written together and signed in therapy after he agreed to give me one final chance to save our marriage. The first step was him learning to trust me again. This is exactly what I got. How many times had my individual therapist, the one I saw outside of our couples sessions, said that if I peeked in Colton's phone enough times, I was going to find something to make me worry, even if it was nothing. Not only are you going to find something that looks suspicious outside of the proper context, but it feels like you're putting it out in the universe that you expect it to happen. That's what she'd said to me in one of our sessions. And I knew all those things. Of course I did. I am a therapist myself, and I would have said the same to any client of mine. None of this knowledge had any effect on the fear pulsing through my body at the moment, though. My throat tightened. It was like all the oxygen had gotten sucked out of the house. What was Colton hiding? Stop it, Jenna! I admonished myself out loud. Sometimes that worked, to snap me out of obsessing. He's not hiding anything. Colton loves you, and you can trust him. I walked over to the mirror, the one above the sink, where I'd repeated those exact affirmations hundreds of times over the past few months. It was part of retraining my brain. I gave myself a hard, punishing stare before splashing cold water on my face. Just like Bodhi, I needed to calm down. It's not like I'd even seen anything incriminating about Colton in their text message thread. Bodhi was clearly the one up to no good, which wasn't the least bit surprising. He'd been in trouble since their childhood. But Colton hadn't actually admitted to any wrongdoing. Who was Elsie? Was that her name? Or just her initials? Why was she so obsessed with Bodhi? Did his wife, Phoenix, know about any of this? It didn't matter. It was fine. Everything was fine. I shoved my paranoid thoughts aside and opened the medicine cabinet, quickly locating the Tylenol. Colton was terrible at finding things even when they were right in front of his face. I grabbed the bottle and headed back downstairs before he could wonder where I'd gone. Did I close his phone before I tossed it down? Was the text thread still open? Oh God, what if it was? I'd been doing so good. The longest streak I'd ever had in our entire history, almost 9 months without snooping. He was going to be furious if he found out. Still, I couldn't keep myself from asking the questions the moment I stepped into the family room with him again. Have you talked to Bodhi lately? I asked, trying to sound casual and laid back while quickly scanning everything about him. He was zoned out on his phone and maniacally shoveling popcorn into his mouth like he hadn't eaten for days. The man could consume thousands of calories before bed and not gain a pound. It wasn't fair. He texted a couple times, he said without looking up from his screen. His long legs were stretched out in their gray sweatpants all the way to the coffee table. His hair was still wet from the shower. I carefully studied his nonverbal communication. That was more important than any of the actual words that might come out of his mouth, as I asked my next question. Anything interesting going on with him? Colton laughed, then gave a casual shrug. You know Bodhi. He's always got something going on. I gave an equally lighthearted laugh back as I settled onto the couch next to him, calculating my next move. Colton had meant it. What he said in therapy before, about leaving me if I couldn't stop invading his privacy, I had to be careful. This was dangerous territory. Our marriage was a battleground full of landmines you had to delicately step around. Pieces of shrapnel embedded in the walls from our previous fights. It hadn't even been a year since he moved back in after our separation. We should do dinner with Phoenix soon, I said, watching his reaction while pretending not to. He finally lifted his eyes from the phone and gave me a confused stare. Really? We just went out with them last week. I was never the one suggesting we spend time with Bodhi and Phoenix. At least not as couples. I immediately regretted saying it because I didn't want to rouse any of Colton's suspicions. I just wanted to create an opportunity to talk about Bodhi and see if Colton would mention the car keying incident. Because not only was something shady possibly happening, but Phoenix was my sister. I shrugged like my intentions were pure. It's different now that she's pregnant, you know? I want to spend as much time as possible with them so that they'll be comfortable leaving the twins with us after they're born. I really want to be close to my nieces, be asked to babysit and take them places. Besides, Bodhi's not so bad when he's being friendly. Especially when we're beating you and him at cornhole. Colton laughed again. This time a full one. all the way to his gut and back up again. I loved his laugh. The four of us really did have fun together the last time we all hung out. Enough fun to land Colton and me with massive hangovers the next day as we struggled to get through brunch with Colton's mom. The mimosas helped. Even though Bodhi was Colton's first cousin, they were so close, they seemed more like brothers. It was no secret I didn't like Bodhi. Half the time, Colton didn't like him either. For the exact same reasons as me. Bodhi was a spoiled, pampered brat. Being the baby of his family and having had a bout of childhood leukemia that nearly killed him had ensured him a lifetime of royalty treatment, especially from his mom. She quit her job when he got diagnosed at 11 to be his 24/7 nurse. And even though he'd been in remission for decades, she still treated him like he was the most precious thing and the most precarious. I had sympathy for him, for what he'd been through as a child, but adult Bodhi could be nearly intolerable with his constant need for attention and his immaturity. But when Colton wasn't fighting with him, he was a fiercely loyal cousin, as protective as any big brother. That's why I always treaded lightly. I never knew which side he'd be on at any given time, and there was no way to predict it. Maybe, he shrugged, then quickly winced. My head still really hurts. I know I just made popcorn and we were going to watch another episode of Tell Me Lies, but do you think we could just go to bed? I'm exhausted and I have a huge day tomorrow. Was he so tired because it'd been a long day at work or because he'd met Bodhi afterward? Maybe his team meeting hadn't run over like he told me. Maybe he was late because he'd been with Bodhi, figuring out what they were going to do about whatever trouble he'd gotten himself into. I kept my face straight, my mouth shut. If you go in my phone again, it's over. That's what Colton said in our therapy session before agreeing to move back. That's what he told me. And as usual, I didn't even have enough information to go on that he'd done anything wrong. Nothing to confront him with. Maybe it was nothing. So, I reached over and wrapped my arms around his, pulling him up and off the couch with me. I smiled at him. Of course. Let's get you to bed. A good night's sleep will help your headache and hopefully you'll feel better in the morning. He grinned back at me and followed me upstairs. Chapter 3. I was wide awake. My thoughts swirled as I stared at the ceiling. Colton lay next to me and had been snoring away for hours, asleep almost as soon as his head hit the pillow. If he had any kind of guilty conscience, it certainly hadn't kept him up. I felt like I was in a weird vacuum with my earplugs still snug in my ears. It was how I slept every night, in a noise-canceling tunnel. It hadn't always been like this. When Colton and I first started dating, I said his snoring didn't bother me and that it wasn't a big deal. Almost 5 years into our marriage, sometimes I wanted to kill him over it. Just put the pillow right over his head to make the sounds stop. Colton's phone lay plugged in on his nightstand, calling out to me. The biggest presence in the room. And there wasn't even a specific reason why I'd looked at it tonight. Not one that I could find, anyway. There'd been plenty of times in the past when I'd clearly been triggered by something he'd said or done, like when he forgot to tell me he was stopping at the grocery store on his way home from work, or let his phone die while watching the soccer game with his friends. But this wasn't one of those instances. We'd had a super chill night sitting in front of the TV. Not a cloud on the horizon. He'd gone to make popcorn and left his phone lying on the coffee table. I just picked it up without thinking and typed in his password. Now I wish he'd changed it. Or that I hadn't insisted on sharing all our passwords again. Because maybe that would have stopped me. The pause that would have come after entering the wrong numbers. But the screen opened right up, and I went directly to the conversation between him and Bodhi. There hadn't been any intention behind that either. I just opened the first text thread. the last person he'd been talking to. By the time I was a few messages in, I couldn't be stopped. It wasn't my fault I didn't trust anyone. I hadn't always been this way. You'd never know it by my behavior now, but I used to be a very trusting person. So innocent and optimistic about everyone's intentions, bordering on gullible. But I grew up loved and cared for properly and believed people were who they said they were because they always had been. I knew that made me a special kind of privileged, but it didn't make it any less true. Being completely betrayed and abandoned by your father at 16 will change all of that. I've never been the same. It was one thing for him to walk out on my mother. Not that it was okay, but people did it all the time. Just ended their marriages, even good ones. So part of me always understood that. But it was something entirely different to walk out on me and my sister. He hadn't left our family for a younger woman or a chance to live as a bachelor. Nope. He abandoned us for a woman with a daughter who was only a year older than me, right between me and Phoenix, and moved to a neighboring county. He never even said goodbye, never told me he was sorry, no I love yous or explanation. The man who'd been my hero, who blew on my knees when I scraped them after falling off my bike and took me on special weekend dates to see my favorite bands, who slept on the floor of my bedroom when I was sick, the one who'd always called me his princess. That guy. He wanted nothing to do with me. He wouldn't even speak to me or Phoenix after he left. Our only connection to him was the check he deposited into our mother's bank account every month. And he only did that because it was mandated by family court. Meanwhile, he seemed to be totally present for his other daughter, Mackenzie, and I was obsessed with knowing why. What did Mackenzie have that I didn't? Facebook had just launched around that time. So I created a fake profile and immediately started cyber-stalking my dad and his new family. I was so happy when Mackenzie accepted my friend request. Shortly afterward, I accidentally ran into her at the library while she was studying. The two of us forged a friendship and started hanging out together on the weekends. My dad never suspected anything. Not that I was trying to keep it a secret. The restraining order against me didn't come until after he walked into his dining room and discovered me sitting at the table with his new wife and stepdaughter. He completely freaked out. I'd never seen him so mad. He'd thrown me out of the house and called the police. I wasn't allowed within 20 feet of him or his family. So, yes, I had a few issues. But I'd spent years in therapy working through them, ultimately dedicating my career to helping others with mental health concerns. Colton had been so patient with me in the beginning, going to therapy sessions and sitting in the waiting room to provide emotional support, listening to me talk for hours, holding me and rubbing my back when I cried. He came up with all these different ways to help me feel safe with him, too. Sharing his location, constantly checking in, reassuring me about his feelings, and assuring me he'd never abandon me like my father did. He was the one that willingly offered up all of his logins and passwords at the beginning of our engagement. He'd handed me his iPhone like it was a wedding ring. "We're one heart," he'd said as he gazed deep into my eyes. "And I have nothing to hide from you." He'd been kneeling next to the couch when he said it, so it was almost like he was proposing all over again. To me, it felt nearly as special. I'd never been so loved and cared for. There was this incredible sense of safety I hadn't felt since before my father left. which was why my behavior was as baffling to me as it was to him. Colton was a saint. So good he was actually kind of boring. I'd never found anything I could even pretend to be upset about. Until now. Or maybe it was nothing. He'd never broken my trust before, never cheated or misled me. I'd know, since I did a deep dive on his social media and whatever other information I could find about him online as soon as we started dating. I did it with every guy I was interested in. Colton had come back clean. Every time. Even when I ran his background check. My friends thought that was taking things a step too far, but it was too easy to do when our relationship was getting serious. I still had all the software from my previous job at the clinic. Colton was an upstanding man. What you saw was what you got. And he had every right to be mad at me for the things I did. He was shocked when he found out the lengths I'd gone to see if he was hiding anything. He asked me to stop, but even then, he was still assuring me that he understood my feelings, how I'd been betrayed. But that was the thing about Colton. He didn't. Very few people did. Besides, maybe my mom, who'd been just as wrecked as me. To this day, she'd never dated another person, and it'd been almost 16 years. Even though Colton's childhood was filled with rough patches because of Bodhi's leukemia, he'd never been betrayed like that. He'd never had the world ripped out from underneath his feet with absolutely no warning, a free fall into space and landing in a universe you didn't know existed beforehand. Getting abandoned by my father for another wife and daughter rocked me to my core. It changed my DNA. Stopping all checking behavior on Colton was like giving up a drug. I didn't realize how powerful the dopamine hits I got from looking were or how tough it would be to lose the sweet release, the one that came every time I saw everything was okay. In the early days of quitting, I had to literally sit on my hands and count out loud. But sometimes even that didn't help. It physically hurt not to look, and I had to do something with my hands. So I'd scrub the floor, clean the bathroom. Checking his things, his phone, emails, accounts, all his apps, was like a tic that grew more and more uncomfortable the longer I tried to suppress it. That's how it felt tonight with his phone charging on the nightstand. The possibility of a secret was so much stronger than my willpower. Stronger than his threats and ultimatums, especially if Phoenix's well-being was somehow involved. I reached over Colton and unplugged his phone, being as careful as possible not to wake him. I moved with stealth back across his body to my side of the bed, a move I'd done hundreds of times before. I typed in his passcode and pulled up the text thread between him and Bodhi, quickly finding the spot where I'd left off, and continued reading their conversation.
Jenna knows I was there. I'm not guilty of anything.
She might know about the bachelor party, but she definitely doesn't know about the strippers.
LOL, you think Jenna cares about the strippers? We've been together a long time. We talked about going to a club and getting a dance together just for fun.
Pretty sure she'd care if LC told her what happened.
I had nothing to do with that.
For real?
Yes, bro, for real.
You're the one that said I should take her in the room alone.
Because you were practically making out with her in the living room. It was getting awkward for everyone.
Well, sometimes things happen. And I was too drunk that night. Why'd you let me drink so much?
Dude, it was a bachelor party. I had way too much to drink that night, too. Everyone did.
We just need to make this go away. Especially now that she's coming for Phoenix.
How's she handling it?
She's so pissed. You should have heard her going off when she FaceTimed me from the parking lot. She can't figure out why someone did that to her. I kept telling her it was random, like you were saying. But the LC is so clear. Her car is going to be in the shop for weeks. She needs a whole new door. She's racking her brain trying to figure out if she knows anyone with those initials.
All right, go take care of Phoenix and don't worry. It's going to be fine.
You always say that.
And I'm always right. I'm going to bed. Text me tomorrow.
Their conversation abruptly ended. Phoenix hadn't said anything about her car getting keyed when I texted her earlier today. I quickly admonished myself, giving Phoenix the benefit of the doubt instead. Maybe we'd been chatting before it even happened. I was trying so hard to shift our relationship into a more positive space. I really did want to be closer to her and my nieces. Had Bodhi actually had sex with a stripper? Or had he just been acting like an idiot and got carried away? Would Phoenix want me to tell her about this, or keep it a secret? So many unanswerable questions. Then, there was Colton, and his part in all of this. Really, all he'd done was deny that I'd be upset about whatever they were referencing in regard to the strippers. He said I wouldn't care if I found out about them. Which might be true. Except he never told me about any strippers. He'd barely said anything about the party at all. Just that he was hungover after their big night out and wanted to go to bed early. "I'm too old for this shit," had been his exact words after the 3-hour drive back from the city on Sunday. They'd only been gone for the night, but it had sucked up his entire weekend. According to his call history from tonight, his last call with Bodhi was when he pulled into our driveway around 6. He was on the phone with Bodhi right up until the moment he got home. Yet, when I asked him about talking to Bodhi, he acted like it was nothing. Clearly, this wasn't nothing. I glanced over at him, making sure he was still asleep. Satisfied that he was, I quickly turned back to their text thread. After skimming what I'd already read to make sure I didn't miss anything, I scrolled back to the weeks leading up to the bachelor party, months ago. There was nothing else like that in those texts. Mostly, it was about their fantasy football league and stupid memes. And then, an exchange from late January caught my eye. Years of obsessively stalking people had trained me to spot certain red flag words.
I booked the stripper, by the way.
You did it yourself? Look at you, all grown up.
Yep. Wasn't that hard. That app you sent was great.
True.
You're never going to guess what her name is, LOL.
Candy? Jezebel?
Better. Lexus Chardonnay.
Just then, Colton stood next to me. He reached for me, but his arm didn't slide easily around my waist like it would if I was lying next to him, since I was sitting up with my back against the headboard. His hand landed on my thigh. "Baby," he called out sleepily, slowly raising his head off the pillow, his eyes squinting, struggling to wake up. I slid down and quickly lay on top of him, wrapping my arms around him, my right hand holding tight to his phone. "I'm right here, babe." I kissed the top of his head and rubbed his chest with my other hand while carefully plugging his phone back into the charger on his nightstand. "Go back to sleep," I said, breathing a sigh of relief that he hadn't caught me. Chapter 4. Colton always left first thing in the morning, and I was grateful he was gone by the time I woke up. I wasn't ready to talk to him about anything until I had more facts. Even then, depending on what I found, I still hadn't decided if I'd bring it up. As things stood, it definitely wasn't worth the risk to my marriage. I loved Colton more than anyone in the world, and even though we'd been through a lot, our struggles made us stronger. He'd given me ultimatums before, but when he actually packed a bag and moved out last year, that's how I knew he meant it. I rolled out of bed and plodded to the kitchen to grab coffee. I'd need extra today because I'd slept terrible last night, if you could even call what I did sleeping. It seemed better described as violent spurts of lucid dreams. I should have just gotten up. I eyed the backyard as I waited for the Keurig to finish brewing. A few years ago, Colton and I converted our garage into a home office for my private therapy practice. And sometimes I spent more time out there than I did inside the actual house. It was a good thing I loved the space so much. We'd spent weeks carefully designing the room and picking out the furniture, paying extra attention to the area where I'd conduct sessions. 2 gorgeous leather chairs from Urban Home in front of the straight-backed couch. It was a couch that said, "Sit down and tell me all your secrets." We both loved it. The garage had been the first big renovation we'd done together. And contrary to what all our other married friends said, we had a blast doing it. We've been taking on various home improvement projects ever since. It was one of our favorite activities. We plan to start the laundry room next week. I grabbed my coffee and added the cream I swore I was giving up before opening the patio door and stepping outside. I blew on the steaming hot liquid as I walked through the backyard and into my office. I headed straight to the computer on my desk and jiggled the mouse, bringing it to life. Adrenaline immediately erased the fatigue I'd been feeling seconds ago. What a bunch of idiots, I thought, shaking my head. Even though Colton was right about one of the things he'd said in the text to Bodhi, I couldn't care less about strippers. But men really still had them at their bachelor parties in their 30s? That was a thing? It seemed pretty immature, but if anyone would go for it, it would be Jeffrey, the biggest playboy in their group of friends. This was the only bachelor party Colton had been to in 3 years, so it had to be the one him and Bodhi were referencing in their text messages. Jeffrey was the last guy in Colton's college fraternity to get married. Most of their college friends had been with their wives for years now and were moving into the next phase, the having kids part. I should be able to ask Colton about all this. Any normal wife would be justified in asking her husband about disturbing messages related to a stripper that she'd found in his phone, especially if the consequences related back to her sister. But I wasn't a normal wife. The thing that had happened in our marriage, the unexpected twist, I'd become the villain in our story, turned into the liar I was so terrified of Colton being. Because after a while, he wasn't so patient or understanding with my constant snooping and never-ending questions about his whereabouts. Convinced he was lying even when he was telling the truth. Certain that every time he left the house, he was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. I even stalked the social media profiles of his female clients. He started getting really upset over my behavior, but I couldn't stop, no matter how badly I wanted to. Instead, I started lying to him, which quickly spiraled into a huge problem in our relationship. That's what led to his first ultimatum about my obsessive behavior. Shortly after we got engaged. "You have to trust me or it's over." I'd managed to quit for a while, but something about actually getting married had triggered all my old insecurities and paranoia again. We'd only been married a few months before I was back to doing all the things I wasn't supposed to be doing. Going through his phone and his emails, snooping in his office drawers, eavesdropping on his conversations whenever I could, and lying about it each time he asked. He gave me another ultimatum, but by then, I couldn't quit. I was like a rat that couldn't stop pressing the lever until she passed out. It'd been that way ever since. These periods of time where it's really good between us, everything I'd always wanted in a relationship. And then I didn't know what happened to me. I'd inevitably start spying on him again. Once, we had just come back from one of the most romantic weekends we'd ever had on Lake Tahoe. He'd rented us the cutest house, took care of everything, cooked all the meals. We'd stay up long into the night sipping whiskey by the fire and talking about our childhoods. Everything from the most serious stuff to stories that made us laugh so hard we cried. We drove back from that trip feeling like we were returning from our second honeymoon. 2 days later, I peeked in his phone. That's when I knew. The problem had nothing to do with him or how he treated me. It was all about my own issues. There was no doubt that I'd become addicted to the toxicity of the cycle, and part of me couldn't live without the dramatic highs and lows. At least, that's my therapist's theory. I stared at my computer screen, my stomach in knots. It wasn't about the fact that they'd hired a stripper. Not really. There was one huge glaring issue standing out in Colton and Bodie's messages. The young woman's name. Lexis Chardonnay. That's a name you didn't forget. So, when my client Caitlin told me her stage name in therapy last year, it stuck. I'd immediately remembered Caitlin when reading Colton's text messages last night. There was no way. It couldn't be. But Lexis Chardonnay? That name was so unique. Could there be more than one? What if it was Caitlin they were talking about? I'm a marriage and family therapist and have been in private practice for almost 7 years. Every therapist has their specialties, and mine had always been cognitive behavioral therapy with adults. I didn't like working with kids because it felt like too big of a responsibility. The first few years building up my practice had been tough, but I'd patiently and diligently grown it one client at a time until it was thriving. I saw over 30 clients a week now, and I was fairly certain Lexis Chardonnay was one of them, that her real name was Caitlin Walsh. But the idea of Caitlin doing something as violent as keying a car seemed completely outside the realm of possibility. My client was a third-year medical student and spent most of her time studying and in the library. She worked as an adult entertainer to pay her own way because she couldn't work a retail job with all her classes and internships. She swore a couple parties a month paid her tuition for an entire semester, more than she could make with any other part-time gig. There'd never been any judgment on my part. If anything, I wish I would have been brave enough to do something like that when I was young and broke. There were certain moments with clients where it was almost impossible to keep a straight face. When what they'd share was so surprising that your reaction leaked through and it took a second to get back to your neutral therapist expression. That's why her name and her story stood out in my mind. I'd never expected Caitlin to say she worked as an adult entertainer, a detail that only emerged months into our sessions. But that was the thing. If she could surprise me in that way, what's to say she couldn't surprise me in another equally shocking way? It wasn't unheard of for my clients to pop up in my life outside of my practice. We lived in a small suburb outside of Scottsdale. I'd run into clients of mine at the grocery store, sometimes at the gas station. It was inevitable in such a tiny community, and I was a pro at handling those moments. The problem tugging at my insides was that Caitlin wasn't in a good spot the last time I'd seen her for a session. She was heading into finals week and completely overwhelmed with everything on her plate. She was barely sleeping because she was staying up all night to study. Not eating well. She was pale and gaunt with huge black bags underneath her eyes. She was worried about school, super stressed about money. Those two things were intricately linked together, since the scholarship she depended on to help pay for her tuition was contingent on good grades. She'd broken up with her boyfriend. She was fighting with her roommate. It was definitely the lowest spot she'd been in since I had started seeing her 2 years ago, and the first time I had been actually concerned about her ability to take care of herself. Then I remembered something else. Something that made my stomach drop. Caitlin was really paranoid and worried about a guy we'd nicknamed Stan. There was no telling what his name actually was. We'd made up something just so we didn't have to keep referring to him as her stalker. Caitlin had been completely spun out about it. She was convinced he was violent, that he was following her. I was concerned she may be having a manic episode, even though she'd never had one before. I'd never once stopped to consider that what Caitlin was saying about Stan was true. It all sounded like textbook paranoid delusion. Something that, ironically, I was excellent at spotting. Now I wish I'd paid more attention to the details. I couldn't remember exactly what she'd described. I had been too busy trying to ascertain her overall mental health and how concerned I needed to be about the danger Caitlin might pose to herself. What had she said? There was no way this Stan guy was connected with this, or with Bodhi. There couldn't be. Except I couldn't shake the name. Lexus Chardonnay. My mind kept reeling back to it over and over again. I wasn't going to talk to Colton. Not yet. What I was going to do, though, was go through all of my sessions with Caitlin this morning before my first client arrived. After all, there was nothing wrong with snooping in my own stuff. No rules against that in our marriage contract. And having a plan in my mind was exactly what I needed. Chapter 5. I've always kept meticulous therapy notes. It's why I'd never had or needed an assistant. I had a very specific system that only I could track and manage, so I easily located Caitlin's file on my computer. I always asked my clients for permission to record their sessions before they began treatment. A few of them allowed me to use video, and I would have loved if they all were that way, so I could look back at their body language and facial expressions. Many people weren't comfortable with that, but most of them consented to the audio recording for my records. It wasn't invasive, and after a while, they usually forgot it was even happening. My recordings were my most valuable therapy tool. I went straight to Caitlin's last session, which was almost a month ago. I moved the cursor to the beginning. I sat up straight in my chair, at complete attention, and pressed play. My pen poised to take notes like it was an actual session. I quickly fast-forwarded through all the introductory stuff. I spent the first 5 minutes of every session making small talk with my clients. It helped them as they got settled and was good for rapport. Caitlin wasn't any different. She was usually finishing up her dinner because our sessions were during the break between her last shift at the hospital and the start of her evening classes. Sometimes she hadn't even gotten a chance to eat anything before she got to my office, and we ended up having dinner together during our session. This particular session, she came empty-handed. I kept fast-forwarding until I got to the critical point, locating the exact spot where Caitlin's pacing changed. I leaned closer to my computer as if that would ensure I wouldn't miss anything important.
Do those blinds shut? Can we shut those blinds? Are they always open like that?
Is the sun in your eyes? I'm sorry, I didn't realize. It's usually not bright at this time of day. Do you want me to shut them?
Yes, please. I think he might have followed me here.
Followed you here? Who? What do you mean by that?
I caught him outside of the apartment twice already. The first time, I wasn't totally sure, but then when it happened the second time, I knew it was him.
Miles?
No, Miles would never do anything creepy like that. He might be mad at me, but he's normal, not scary. I'm talking about Stan.
Stan's been looking in your windows.
Yes, and following me to work, and I've seen him outside of my classes too. At least I think it was him. It's so hard to tell, you know? He's everywhere. I feel his eyes on me all the time. Are you sure those blinds are all the way down?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I taped ours shut at the apartment after I saw him, or I think I saw him.
You taped the blinds?
Mm-hmm. I did. I know, it's silly. Olivia looked at me like I was crazy because, I'd already closed them, pulled them down, but what if they came back up? That could happen, so I taped them. I know it doesn't make any sense, but you don't really do things that make sense when you're in situations like this, Not like things like this happen to me all the time. They don't.
I've noticed you're talking faster than usual today. Has anyone else mentioned that to you?
What do you mean?
Have your friends or family expressed any concerns about your behavior in the last few days?
No. What are you talking about? Why are you looking at me like that? I don't like how you're looking at me. That's exactly how Olivia's been this week. Tiptoeing all over the apartment, trying to spy on me too. Did you talk to her? What's going on? Did she call you?
I'm sorry, Caitlin. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, but I want you to hear that I'm just asking questions to get a better idea of where you're at. I'm a little bit concerned about you this evening because you seem anxious and agitated in a way that's out of character for you.
No, you're not. You don't believe me either. Oh my God! I can see it in your eyes. I tried telling my roommate, Olivia. She looked at me the same way you're looking at me right now.
But I thought you just said nobody had expressed any concerns about you.
How am I supposed to act? Do you know how stressful this is? Then when you reach out and ask for help, nobody believes you? You have no idea what that's like. Nobody does. Makes you feel like you can't trust your own mind. I can't live like this. Maybe some people can, but I can't. I'm going to do something about this. I can't just sit here and let him torture me. I have to fight back.
What's going on? Can you tell me what's so stressful right now? Maybe if you explain things, I might be able to help you find solutions.
Oh my God, I just did. Where have you been? You never listen. Why does nobody listen? Some weirdo freak is stalking me. That's what's stressing me out.
Caitlin, please sit down. I can see that I've upset you, and I don't want to upset you further. Let's see if we can try to talk about what's going on. Tell me how you're feeling.
Do you think I'm stupid? You think I don't know where you're going with all of your questions? Of course I know where you're going. Campus security said the same thing. I'm so sick of everyone looking at me like that. I know what I'm seeing. I'm not crazy.
You've been to campus security again?
Yes, because Stan left a note on my windshield in the parking lot, right outside the gym, on campus, broad daylight in front of everyone. I thought they might be able to do something since it was on school grounds, but they still won't.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. Don't they have cameras in that parking lot? Can you get a hold of the footage somehow? Would that help?
Of course they have cameras. Nobody let me see the tape, though. They threw me out of the office, but you know what? I'm gonna show everyone what's happening. I'm gonna prove it. They'll see I'm not just making this up, some hysterical woman looking for attention. Guess what? I hate attention.
Caitlin, will you please sit down? I can see that you're upset, and I'd really like to talk about this. You're not staying? Caitlin, you don't have to sit if you don't want to. Just please stay until you're not so upset. Caitlin! I slowly sank back in my office chair. I'd been concerned about Caitlin that afternoon, but let her go because I never forced my clients to do anything. Not unless they were a physical threat to themselves or someone else. My clients had complete autonomy. Caitlin wasn't the first person who'd gotten angry or emotionally triggered in this office and stormed out mid-session. She wouldn't be the last either. Caitlin hadn't been back since. That also wasn't all that unusual. Clients disappeared for months, sometimes years at a time, for all sorts of different reasons. I checked the records and saw I left Caitlin a voice message the following week when she missed our regularly scheduled session. But I never heard anything back. I moved the cursor to the beginning of the confrontation and pushed play again. I was more concerned than ever after a second listen. Had I missed something huge in this moment? Dismissed a victim because I didn't believe her? Done what I'd spent my entire life advocating against? I felt awful. In my own defense, it did seem way more likely that Caitlin was having some form of manic episode because of the stress of finals and lack of sleep. It was a common occurrence on campus and something I always kept in mind while treating students. The majority of psychotic breaks with college-aged kids happened during finals weeks. It was possible she'd been taking Adderall too. So many of them took it to stay awake and study all night. Lots of times they ended up as tweaked and paranoid from Adderall as someone who'd been up doing meth for days. So Caitlin being strung out on Adderall? That was a huge probability. The likelihood of Stan stalking her the way she described, not so much. Especially since I knew Caitlin's apartment was on the 3rd story. That was the red flag that made me doubt her stability and the reliability of her story from the very beginning. She claimed Stan scaled the building to peek inside her windows? I had no idea who this guy was, if he even existed, but he wasn't Spider-Man. How would he have even gotten up there? It's not like he could just lay a ladder against the bricks undetected. Plus, it'd have to be a huge ladder. Someone else would have seen him and reported him. Now, I really wanted to reach out to Caitlin. Was it wrong to call her again? It felt borderline unethical since my motives weren't pure, but no one knew that besides me. And I wasn't going to actually tell Caitlin the reason I looked her up and was calling to check on her. Hey, I think you might be the stripper that's threatening my brother-in-law would not go over well. The other problem was that I was no longer certain it was Bodhi's safety I needed to worry about. I was equally concerned about Caitlin's now that the story might be getting more complex. What were the odds that she had a stalker at the same time that she was harassing Bodhi? Were the two of them connected? Or was I just being paranoid again? Maybe the two things weren't related at all. I kept going back to Caitlin's stage name, Lexis Chardonnay. I was sure that's the name she told me about, and there was no getting around that. I'd hoped to get some clarity by going through her sessions, but with this last recording, I was only growing more confused and concerned. I glanced at the clock on the wall behind the couch, strategically put there since most of my clients sat in that spot and couldn't see it above their heads. It made it easy to pace the session. 90 minutes until my first one, and then I was back to back the rest of the day. Even booked through lunch. I had to hurry if I wanted to get through more audio. My phone buzzed with a call. Phoenix. Oh, snap. I totally forgot I told her we'd walk this morning. We usually walked on Tuesdays, but she had a doctor's appointment, so we'd switch days this week. I reluctantly pulled myself away from my desk. I knew better than to keep a pregnant woman waiting. Chapter 6. Phoenix was standing on our front steps, holding her phone out while she called me again. Glittery pink nails tapped on the screen. She held the leash of their dog, Quimby, with her other hand. Their 3-year-old golden doodle, who believed she was the baby of the family, was definitely going to have a hard time giving up that coveted spot to the twins once they arrived. Phoenix was already worried about it. Hey, I called, waving and hurrying over to greet her. She swore she'd already gained 20 pounds, even though it was only the second trimester, but if she had, she wore it well. She was pretty much the cutest pregnant woman I'd ever seen. Her cheek shone with a rosy glow, brown eyes radiant, and skin sparkling. I gave her a quick hug, which always felt awkward, no matter how many times we did it. We never moved together right and almost always bumped heads or something. Today was no different as my nose caught her chin pulling out of the embrace. I didn't hear the doorbell. I was out back in my office. Sorry. No worries, she said like it wasn't a big deal, but she looked annoyed. There were things I'd never been able to read about her. Being irritated with me wasn't one of them. We walked in silence for a few minutes. Sometimes our walks were as awkward as our hugs. Even when I wasn't late, there were mornings when she just seemed irritated with me for no reason. Like she didn't want me around, which was weird, given she'd been the one to suggest walking together on Tuesdays. She was determined to do 3 miles every morning until she delivered, and said it was easier to get through them if she had someone walking with her. She was one of those people that hated exercising alone. I leapt at the opportunity to hang out with her. Whenever anyone found out that me and Phoenix were sisters married to cousins, it was always a version of the same thing. That sounds amazing. You must all be so close. They'd be right if Phoenix and I were those kind of sisters. I'd always wanted us to be, but my relationship with Phoenix had been contentious since we were kids. Our mom always joked that Phoenix never got over being an only child for the first 3 years of her life. She used to ask our parents to take me back to the hospital. I was always jealous of my friends who were so close to their sisters. Phoenix and I fought all the time. And not just with words, but with scratching, clawing, and biting each other like two cats. Our mom has countless stories of tearing us apart when we were younger. Our parents had fallen prey to the fallacy that they should have their kids close together so they could be friends and playmates. But me and Phoenix never got along. And the harder our parents tried to force it, the more she fought against it. We were never friends. Then, our dad left. And that didn't just change our family structure. It forever changed our relationship, too. Phoenix went on with her life like it never happened, and I was utterly devastated. I could never understand Phoenix's reaction to his abandonment, and it drove an even bigger wedge between us. I couldn't let it go. Phoenix had been furious with me when she found out about me secretly befriending Mackenzie, our dad's new stepdaughter, without telling her who I really was. To this day, Phoenix still believes my behavior was the reason our father wanted nothing to do with us now. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She was walking fast with her head down, chewing on her lip the way she did when she was thinking hard. Was she thinking about her car getting keyed? Why wasn't she saying anything about it? So much of Phoenix was a mystery. Always had been. Phoenix was convinced our dad would have come home eventually, but I kept that from happening. I wanted to point out to her, but never did, that she'd invited him to her wedding and every other big event she'd had over the past decade, and he'd never showed up at a single one or even taken the time to RSVP his decline. He'd had plenty of time to change his mind outside of whatever damage I'd wreaked upon it almost 2 decades ago. It wasn't fair, but it was the narrative Phoenix had written. That somehow if I hadn't turned into such an obsessive freak and befriended Mackenzie, our dad would still be here. Part of me felt guilty and wondered if Phoenix and I would ever recover from it. The other part of me didn't think it was fair that I was still being punished for things I'd done when I was basically only a kid. It's not like I stalked our dad and his family now. "How'd you sleep last night?" I asked, breaking into the silence in both of our thoughts. Ugh, terribly. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know how I can be so tired during the day that I can barely keep my eyes open or function, but the moment I'm supposed to be actually sleeping, I can't fall asleep. I'm going to be so exhausted before the babies even get here. I don't know what I'm going to do. She stopped while Quimby did her business, taking forever to sniff the grass and find the perfect spot. Mom said it was the same thing with us when she was pregnant. Maybe it's a girl thing, I said, even though I knew absolutely nothing about being pregnant. She shrugged. Maybe. Anything else going on? I asked, trying to sound as casual as I sounded about sleep. Besides growing 2 tiny humans inside me that I'm solely responsible for, whose very existence depends on me, not much. I so desperately wanted to blurt out everything, tell her what has been going on, all the things I'd found out. But I held back, especially since she didn't bring up anything about her car. I didn't want her to blame me for this too, whatever this was. I still didn't know if Bodhi had actually cheated. He was such a good partner with Phoenix. Or at least much better than he'd been in previous relationships. He turned his life around for her. Proof of the old adage that you'll do anything for the right woman. Colton and I hadn't believed Bodhi in the beginning when he swore he was smitten and would change his ways for her. He said the same things about all of his girlfriends when he first started dating them, and I figured their relationship would follow a similar pattern. For the first few weeks, Bodhi was always completely enamored with them, head over heels in love, convinced they were the one and he was settling down for good. Those declarations never lasted. It wasn't long before he lost interest, so even though Colton wasn't exactly thrilled about Bodhi hooking up with Phoenix either, neither of us said anything. We just quietly waited for it to pass and hoped for no collateral damage. But it didn't. Phoenix showed up at Thanksgiving that year with Bodhi and our family's apple pie, the recipe passed down from our great-grandmother. The one our mom used to make when we were kids, but hadn't since the year our dad left. It was the first holiday Phoenix and I had celebrated together in almost 7 years. And it was all I could do to keep from crying when I opened the door for them and saw the pie and the look on Phoenix's face. It was at that moment that I decided I'd do anything for our relationship to work. If Phoenix being with Bodhi brought us together, then it was a sacrifice I was willing to make. For what felt like the millionth time in my life, as we walked, I wished I could reach out to Phoenix and talk to her heart to heart, the way I did with my other best friends. I hoped one day we'd have that kind of relationship. What if telling her about Bodhi made that happen? The way sharing secrets sometimes brought you closer, could that even be possible? Doubtful. There'd been one time, shortly after the two of them started dating, that I said something to Phoenix about Bodhi. Let her know I had concerns with how I'd seen him treat women in the past. Very valid concerns because I'd been with Colton for almost 6 years. It's not like I was just getting to know him. I'd seen Bodhi cycle through plenty of women. The conversation didn't go as I expected. It was just like high school when I told Phoenix I'd seen her boyfriend talking to Tiffany Mason behind the bleachers during cheerleading practice, and it looked like they were flirting. She'd flung her hair over her shoulder and given me the nastiest teenage glare. Why'd you even tell me that? She turned her nose up. Like I care. Get your own life. She'd shoved me back against her closet and stormed out of her bedroom. Phoenix said she didn't care, but it sure seemed like she cared after I told her. She obsessively stalked his MySpace page and everything he did at school. But I had never said anything about it to Phoenix again. Not even the following week, when I saw her boyfriend and the other girl kissing in the same spot underneath the bleachers. Phoenix had gotten just as mad when I brought up Bodhi, and I wasn't even pointing out anything specific. They'd barely started dating, so he was still on his best behavior. Phoenix didn't speak to me for 2 months. She was a stand-by-your-man kind of girl. But she was still my sister, and I would do anything for her. Tears filled my eyes as I snuck a peek at her again. I couldn't jeopardize our newfound relationship. What if I told her what Bodhi had done and he denied it? I had nothing to prove it outside of what I'd seen on Colton's phone, and I hadn't taken pictures of any of their messages. They could all be deleted easily. There was no doubt she would believe him over me. And that wasn't even the thing that worried me the most. Phoenix was already considered high risk with the twins because of our family history of HPV and cervical cancer. What if she actually did believe me, and the stress of finding out Bodhi had cheated on her caused something bad to happen with the babies? I couldn't imagine anything more terrible. I'd never be able to live with myself. I had to be absolutely certain if I was going to take that risk. Chapter 7. Back in my office after my walk with Phoenix, I racked my brain, trying to remember when Caitlin first brought Stan up. I barely had any time before my client would be here. Thankfully, he was one of the clients that was always late, but I still had to hurry. I wanted to find the beginning and start there. I saw too many clients a week to remember the specifics. That's why I relied on these recordings. I pulled up the calendar on my phone and found the date of Jeffrey's bachelor party, February 6th. I went back 3 weeks before, secretly hoping that Caitlin had mentioned Stan in those sessions. Because if she had, then there was no way she was connected to whatever situation was happening with Bodhi. But much to my dismay, she hadn't. Finally, I found it. The first mention. Exactly 11 days after Jeffrey's bachelor party.
I did a party almost 2 weeks ago, and one of the clients won't stop sending me messages. It's totally annoying, but now it's starting to actually worry me.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry to hear that. Has anything like that ever happened before with a client?
Yeah, a couple of times. They have our profiles through the app so they can get in touch with us, obviously, and some of them do. Most of them do, actually. They like having some kind of connection. But the app switches the numbers all the time, and obviously they're not our real phone numbers. We never communicate outside of the app. At least, I don't. Some of the other girls do, which is why I'm super careful who I work with. My anonymity is so important to me. There's only like 3 girls I'll even book parties with.
That makes sense. Is it unsettling to have him bothering you like this?
Yes, for sure, but clients do it all the time. They don't understand that everything we do is just a performance. We're acting, pretending to like them, pretending to be turned on by them. That's one thing I don't think I'll ever get used to. How so many of the men think they have a real connection with us. Like we've actually bonded with them and aren't just playing a role. Anyway, sometimes they reach out afterward, but usually just a message or two, and then they lose access and have to go through the whole booking process again.
What do you mean?
They only get your number to message you once they've booked an appointment and you've been assigned to them. Then it's only for a limited time afterward that they can message you. Sort of like how you can chat with your delivery drivers for a few minutes after an order has been delivered. Like Instacart or something, but for adult entertainers. It basically works the same way. It's not like they can't request you again, they obviously can, but it all has to go through the app as a new booking. And then once the appointment is made, they can message you through a new randomly assigned number. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you. And this one hasn't stopped messaging you? Have you told your supervisors? I mean, do you have a supervisor? I know you have security at your events, so I assume someone regulates all of this?
We do, I guess, but it's mostly for physical safety, you know what I mean? That's one of the reasons I liked the app. They provide security, so you don't ever have to worry about that. It's the biggest reason I chose to go with the service and not private, even though I'd probably make more money on my own. You know someone is always going to be there no matter what. I actually feel pretty safe when I do parties. But the digital stuff is different.
How so?
When you sign up, they say someone moderates the app and people are blocked all the time for bad behavior, and maybe that's true, I don't know, but it's not great. Like, I've reported him a bunch of times already, but he keeps coming back. It's so annoying. This is the last thing I need to deal with right now, and Miles is being a total asshole, too. Like, is there a full moon or something?
What's going on with Miles? Are the two of you fighting again? We quickly moved into talking about Miles, and the remainder of our time focused on what was happening in that relationship. He'd gotten mad at her again for canceling on him at the last minute. That in and of itself wasn't a big deal, but it pointed to the much larger, consistent issue of him feeling like he wasn't a big enough priority in her life. He was a much more pressing concern of hers at the time, and I let my client sessions flow in whichever direction they led, within reason, obviously. I moved to our next session and quickly found the spot where Caitlin brought up the guy from the app again. I didn't have to fast forward much since she talked about him almost right away.
They blocked him on the app again.
Who?
My stalker.
Is he still bothering you?
Yes, constantly. Even more than before. The guy is relentless all day long, multiple times.
I feel like we need to give him a name so we can stop referring to him as your stalker.
I don't know. What's a good stalker name? Stan?
Stan the stalker? I think it's a good thing you're pursuing medicine and not creative writing. But seriously, I'm glad they blocked him. Hopefully he leaves you alone now.
Oh, no. I'm pretty sure he's texting me on my personal phone now.
What? How did he get your number?
I have no idea. That's why it's so scary.
How do you know it's the same guy?
It's weird. Technically, I don't, but you know how everyone has a voice that comes through even when they're texting? His is the same one. Same vibe, tone, all of it. I can just tell. I've never answered any of his texts, well, except the first one to say it was the wrong number. But I don't know. It's Stan. He feels like the same person. I'm can't explain it.
What kind of stuff does he say?
He talks to me like we're in a relationship or something. As if we're in a conversation together, even though I never say anything. Who does that? How could a person just sit there and have a one-sided conversation? And it's not like this is a one-time deal. It's been happening for days.
What do you mean, talking to you like you're in a relationship?
So, the first time he texted me, it was like 8 in the morning, and he sent me a message that said, "Hope you slept well last night." I didn't recognize the number, so I was just like, "Hey, I think you have the wrong number." That's the only time I responded to anything. I wish I had just left it. Anyway, I was just trying to be polite, because at first I was like, oh, some girl gave this dude a fake number. That sucks. I felt like I owed it to him to say something, better than to just be ghosted. But then and I guess I'm just assuming it's a male because I've never had a female client before, he said, "I know exactly who I'm talking to, Lexus." When I tell you that I froze, I froze. Like, right there in my bed, staring at my phone. Couldn't even move or process what I was reading. I keep my real life totally separate from my job, and my biggest fear has always been the two of them intersecting in some way. I had no idea what to do.
This must be really stressful for you.
It is. That was like 5 nights ago, and now every morning it's the same thing. Hope you slept well. He also tells me good night. Says he hopes that I have sweet dreams. Sweet dreams? Like what? And then there's all the different pictures he sends me during the day. All these ones of flowers. How he remembered I said I liked daisies, which actually are my favorite flower, tells me that he's thinking about me. That he can't wait until we can see each other again. Always says he hopes I'm not too busy and that I'm taking care of myself. Tells me not to study too hard on biochemistry. Like, he knows the classes I'm taking.
That's really disturbing. You're sure it's some guy from the app?
There's a possibility it's someone else. But what are the odds? He messages me on the app from a bunch of different phones until he gets himself permanently blocked. Then, within hours of that, he's suddenly messaging me on my own phone?
Right. What are you gonna do?
That's just it. What can I do? I block the numbers on my phone just like I blocked them on the app, but he changes the numbers faster than I can block him. I hate this. As if I don't have enough problems in my life without this weirdo. Honestly, I'm second-guessing my decision to do this in the first place. And not even because it's dangerous, but because it's really tainting my views on relationships. Do you know, when I decided to do the gig, I figured my weekends would be full of college guys my own age. All those drunk idiots from the local bar. I didn't expect to be surrounded by married men. That's who the majority of my clients are. Married men or guys about to be married. I think that's why Stan bothers me so much. Because the only jobs I've worked in the last 6 months are 3 bachelor parties, and each of them was the same deal. The only single person at the party was the bachelor. The rest are already married, making all these jokes about it. Which means Stan either has a wife or he's about to have one. And honestly, it's not the bachelors that bother me. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's the whole point, right? Having their last little bit of fun before they settle down for good. It's all the others. The married men. All I can think about is how I'd feel about their behavior if I were one of their wives. They just turn into these disgusting, degenerate pigs at the parties. What is it about anonymous women that allows men to act out their fantasies? No, I take that back. I don't think it's their fantasies. It's what they're actually into, but they're just too ashamed to tell their wives that. They all want us to be and do things their wives won't. Like, they have these idealized and pure versions of their wives in their heads that being too sexy or adventurous might ruin. Or sex is dirty in their minds and they want their wives clean. Anyways, there's a word for it, I think. I remember they used to talk about it back in the day when Tiger Woods was going through all of his stuff. Isn't there a psychological term for that?
I don't think officially. It's not like it's in the DSM or anything. But I think you're talking about the Madonna whore complex.
See? I knew it was a real thing. Honestly, I think it's part of the reason things shifted for me with Miles. I'm just realizing that now as we're talking. I started looking at him differently and wondering what type of guy he'd be at these parties, how he'd behave, the things he'd say, what he was really into sexually that he hadn't shared with me. I don't know. You hear all their conversations too. I'll never forget, once this group of clients were all talking about how bored they were with their wives in bed. It just made me so sad. But then my math mind goes to work and I tell myself, it's only one particular sample of the entire male population. Not all men are like these guys, and I really hope that includes Miles.
Have you thought any more about telling him what you do?
No. Not since the last time you and I talked about it.
I know you've always been worried about what would happen if Miles ever found out. Do you think there's any chance that's happened and maybe he's behind all this?
Well, it could be. Except I don't think Miles would be able to keep something like that to himself. He's too volatile and explosive with his emotions. That's what we fight about the most. He'd be really angry if he found out, especially since I've kept it a secret, and he wouldn't be able to contain himself when we're together.
I'm sorry you're going through this. It sounds really hard.
Maybe all this just means I'm not supposed to do it anymore. It's changed my perspective on men, and I'm not happy about that. Which also makes me feel a bit stupid because honestly, what did I think would happen? I really did assume it would be mostly fraternity guys. Seemed like a good way to make the cool kids pay for my education.
I just want to point out the ways it's helped you reach your goals, too. You're almost to your 4th year and your stipend will increase. Maybe then you won't have to rely on that income anymore. What did you tell me that you taped on your mirror?
Keep your eyes on the prize.
Come on, speak up.
Keep your eyes on the prize.
Exactly. So that's what you're going to do. You're on your way to becoming a brilliant neurosurgeon. You're at the top of your class and always have been. This job has always been temporary. You told me that the very first time you mentioned it. And you might be right. Maybe you're ready to be done. But don't shame yourself for a choice that worked really well until it didn't anymore.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine making it without this job. That's why I took it in the first place. I don't have anyone supporting me. You know that.
I didn't listen to the rest of our discussion talking through the other ways Caitlin might find to supplement her scholarship and help with her finances. She was putting herself through one of the most rigorous medical residency programs in the state. And unlike most of the people she'd gone to school with her entire life, she didn't have wealthy parents or trust funds to help pay for her tuition or living expenses. It added so much more stress to an already stressful situation. There was no mention of Stan in the following session because Caitlin was fighting with Miles again. She spent most of the therapy hour crying over the possibility of losing him for good. Caitlin and Miles had gotten serious the end of their sophomore year in college and decided to stay together during graduate school. But it hadn't gone as easily as they planned. He was deep into his MBA program while she was buried in her 3rd year of medical school. They'd lived in the same place for undergrad, and being at separate campuses on opposite sides of the city now had taken a toll on their relationship. They'd been dancing around breaking up for the past year. They hadn't officially ended it, just doing what they called giving each other space. I was never quite sure what my clients meant when they said that. It seemed a lot like breaking up to me. But Stan was back in Caitlin's next session. That's when things took a real turn. One I wished I'd paid more attention to at the time. You could even hear the shift in Caitlin's voice. It was real fear. Why had I overlooked it? I cringed as I listened to the recording.
I'm really starting to get nervous. He showed up at my job today.
Well, that's understandable. You guys were together a long time, and he's used to seeing you every day. Breakups take a long time to get used to, and it's only been a couple weeks since you officially ended things, hasn't it?
No, not Miles. And we didn't end things, by the way. We're just taking some time apart and working on ourselves. Besides, if Miles had come to visit me at my job, I wouldn't be bothered. It's not like we're on no contact or anything. I'm talking about Stan.
He showed up at your job?
Yes, and I don't mean my extracurricular one. He showed up at the hospital.
Oh my. What happened?
I'm officially freaked out. I could feel someone following me, and when I got out of my car, I had this feeling that was so unbelievably strong. I turned around, and there he was, just standing behind me. He said, "Hey, Lexus, can I talk to you for a second?" I turned back around and just ran for the building. I started screaming and yelling for someone to help me, to keep him away from me. I was screaming all kinds of things. But by the time anyone got out there, he was gone. He must have followed me to school. Or he knows my routine, my schedule, I don't know, but he knows who I am, like who I really am.
That sounds terrifying.
I knew he was from that party as soon as I saw his face.
You remember the party? You can identify him?
Sort of, I guess. I know his first name, I think, what he looks like. I could give them that, tell them where it happened. There were only 8 guys at the party, so maybe it wouldn't be all that hard to track him down.
I know you're not asking my opinion, but you might want to consider going to the police.
You really think they're going to care about a stripper who's being harassed by one of her clients?
Oh, stop that. You should at least file a report or something so that it's on record if something else happens. Stan could actually be dangerous. You don't know who he is or what he's capable of.
I know. It really did scare me. That's why I called Miles and asked him to meet me at the Commons after I was done with my shift so he could walk me out to my car. I was too afraid Stan would be out there again. Even if he was just watching me, I wanted him to see that I was with someone, and not just anyone, you know? Miles is a big guy.
Of course, I understand that. Is Stan still sending you texts?
Every single day. Multiple times. If you just read our texts, you would think we had an actual relationship. I mean, besides the fact that I literally never respond. But his tone, his voice, it sounds like we're super close in his mind. And he knows all these personal things about me, so he's done his research somewhere. Obviously, he showed up at my job.
Unless maybe it's not Stan sending the texts. Maybe it's someone you do know in real life. We've spent time talking about that before. How you were afraid of what would happen if those two worlds ever collided. Maybe they have.
No. I get it, but no, it's him. I can't tell you how I know that, but I just do.
There's not any chance it might be Miles?
Miles? No. Why would Miles do something like this? I told you, he can't keep a secret. And he can talk to me whenever he wants. We're not on no contact.
Yes, I heard you say that. But I just wanted to point out another possibility. To me, it doesn't seem outside the realm of consideration. Hear me out. One of Miles' biggest complaints about you is that you're too independent, right? He doesn't feel like you have space for him with everything else going on in your life. Well, it seems like creating a dangerous scenario, one where you need someone to protect you, might seem in his best interests in a weird way. It's already happened once. You called him last night to walk you to the car. He probably really liked...
It's not Miles, okay? He's not the one doing this.
Okay. I believe you, and I'm sorry you're having to go through this. Do you think it's time you let the campus authorities know? Maybe they can do some type of investigation on their end.
I already have. I went down to the campus police station after I got back from the hospital. I told the officers everything, and they wrote all of it down. But here's the thing. Stan hasn't technically done anything threatening to me. Not once. When you read his texts, they sound like he's a kind and caring friend. He says, "I miss talking to you all the time," or "I hate when I go so long without seeing your beautiful green eyes."
What?
Yes, see, that's what I mean. That's the level of diabolical he's coming at me with. Do you see how it sounds even when you just heard it? I could see the male officer being like, "I bet this chick just deleted her side of the messages." He came right out and asked me if there was anything that had been deleted from the thread. Do you want to see the messages?
No, that's fine. I believe you. I'm sorry if it seemed like I didn't when I brought up Miles. Part of my job as a therapist is to suggest alternative scenarios that you might not have considered, to help you make connections. That's the only reason I brought him up. Not because I think you're not telling the truth about being harassed.
I get it. I'm not mad.
How did it go with campus security?
The whole exchange was bad. I hated every minute. They acted completely shocked when I told them I was a third-year medical student. They started treating me differently, the way some men do, especially ones in authority when they figure out you might actually be smart. It's like they reevaluate everything because I might have a few brain cells in my head and not just be pretty. I don't mean to sound arrogant or anything, but you're pretty too, so I know you must get the same thing. Like when men find out you have a PhD. And this is therapy. We're supposed to tell the truth in therapy, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. And I'll take the compliment.
It's crazy the way some men act when they realize we're smart. Attractive and intelligent? They don't know what to do. They lose their minds. Anyway, I could go off on that for days, but I don't want to get sidetracked. So, I told the officer that I was a medical student initially when they were taking the report, but then when it got down to the specifics of what was going on, obviously they started asking more detailed questions. I want them to find whoever it is, so I couldn't lie. I told them exactly how I met Stan. And as soon as I told them I was an adult entertainer, their entire opinion of me clearly shifted again. You could practically see the previous respect draining from their eyes. That's why I never tell anyone what I do.
Listen, we're out of time, but I'm not going to let you go down that path of feeling shame. You're an exceptionally smart and capable woman who's been so successful in this life without a single ounce of support from anyone else. Not a father or a mother, a husband, not a boyfriend, girlfriend. Your success, it's all you. And that's something you should be proud of. Don't let anyone take that away from you.
Okay, boss. You always make me feel better.
It's because I'm speaking the truth. I've told you so many times that you're way too hard on yourself. This is one of those times. Real quick, since my next client is outside, how did you leave things with the campus police?
They said they'd look into it, but they basically let me know that unless Stan threatens me or hurts me, he isn't breaking any laws by incessantly texting. I can't prove the guy in the parking lot is the one sending the texts. In fact, they pointed out that never once in the text did I ask him to stop. Like, because I hadn't said anything that somehow meant I was inviting them. Except they were from a complete stranger and engaging with them might have been dangerous, but whatever. They don't understand.
I'm sorry that was your experience. I hate leaving things so open-ended. Do you think maybe this week it might be helpful to check in on Wednesday by phone?
Can we do that?
Absolutely. That was the end of Caitlin's in-person sessions related to this mess. And I was more convinced than ever that she was the Lexis Chardonnay who Bodhi and Colton were referring to in their text messages. Caitlin, a.k.a. Lexis Chardonnay, had clearly been the adult entertainer at Jeffrey's bachelor party. Was she threatening one of them while simultaneously being threatened by Stan? If that was the case, why did Caitlin never mention that part in any of our sessions? And there was something else. Bodhi made it sound like he and Lexis had crossed a line sexually, which seemed like another important detail to leave out. Sometimes clients didn't tell the whole truth, trying to present an idealized version of themselves in treatment. But this all seemed like far too much to gloss over. Everything about these sessions looks so different now. This was the hard part about hearing yourself conduct therapy. Always was. Even in graduate school during supervision, when you heard things come out of your mouth, expressing your unconscious biases, leading clients, crossing over ethical lines, things you missed that were so obvious. You really couldn't see outside of the lens of your own perception, no matter how hard you tried. Caitlin said she remembered the party and Stan's actual name. She knew all the party details, that they were married men. None of that had been concerning to me at the time, or worth following up on. I was providing therapy, not conducting an investigation. Could I have gotten the details out of her if I'd asked? My ring alarm buzzed with my first session of the day. My head spun. I was way too invested in this to let it go, but I had to, at least for the next 60 minutes. Did I record my check-in phone call with Caitlin, the one she mentioned as we ran out of time? Oh, I hope so. Sometimes I did, and other times I didn't. There's no reason other than whether or not I remembered to press record and let them know I was recording them. Fingers crossed I did. I took a moment to breathe, to focus. Then, I unlocked the door and greeted my next client with a smile. Come in, Richard. It's so good to see you. Chapter 8. Guilt crept in, and I tried to shove my feelings back down as far as they would go. I didn't have time to feel guilty, not now. Not when I'd faked an emergency phone call to end my last session 15 minutes early. There was simply no way to make it through to the end of the day without getting current on Caitlin. And besides, it was impossible to focus on a single thing my clients were saying. I had to know if our worlds had collided, and if they had, just how would they shatter? I checked the door a final time, then wiggled the computer mouse and brought up the folder that stored all my client phone calls. To my dismay, I didn't have the last call with Caitlin there. I refused to get discouraged, though. Even though I hadn't recorded it, I would have taken notes, and they had to be here somewhere. I dug through the files in my desk drawer until I found the yellow legal pad with my scribbled thoughts from our call. Olivia expressing concerns about her mental health. That was the first note at the top of the dated page. Olivia and Caitlin had lived together since junior year. Most of the time, they got along great. Just not when Olivia was doubting Caitlin's mental stability. My next notes were really just a series of questions. Me thinking out loud on paper. Manic? Adderall? Family history of psychosis? I remembered how Caitlin had gone on and on about being worried Stan was peeking into their apartment windows and following her. I couldn't remember the details of the story, but I vividly remembered her rapid and pressured speech, her tangential thoughts, jumping all over the place. That's why I hadn't paid as much attention to the actual content. Says he has black eyes. I'd been worried then, because no real person has black eyes. I shifted into a brief mental status exam. That's really what I wanted to ascertain. If Caitlin had been having a mental health emergency and needed additional services to be safe. I asked all the important questions. Date, time, current president. I was happy that Caitlin was oriented to time and space. That was always a good sign. I'd wanted to ask more questions and to get her to talk to campus security again. Not because I believed Stan was climbing their building and peeking into their windows, but I'd hoped they'd recognize her emotional distress and disturbed mental state. Then, they could keep an eye on her, follow up and put her in touch with campus counseling services. But we'd never gotten that far because Olivia came home and Caitlin didn't want to talk in front of her. She jumped off the call almost immediately. The next time I talked to Caitlin was our in-person session, the final one we had where she'd been even more paranoid about Stan and stormed out. Everything looked so dramatically different now. I cringed at how I'd handled our last few conversations. I'd never stopped to consider that Caitlin was telling the truth about it all. Not once. I doubted her story from the very beginning, but tried to pretend like I didn't because I wanted her to think I believed her, to feel supported. If I'd truly believed her, I would have asked so many more questions. Then there was the party itself. If I'd had any idea that she was referring to a party my husband had attended, I would have obviously followed up on that too. But I'd never think to consider a connection between something happening in my client's life with something going on in my personal life, especially not with Colton. The truth is, I hadn't wanted him to go to the bachelor party from the very beginning, partly because of my abandonment issues, but more so because I didn't trust Bodhi not to act like an idiot. Colton didn't really want to go either. He'd turned into a total homebody since moving back in, and our favorite spot in the evening was cuddled up next to each other on the couch, binging whatever show we were currently obsessed with. Bodhi's been so good ever since he got engaged, but I just know he's going to think he has permission to get wasted, even if it's not his party. And you know how much I hate drunk Bodhi. That's what he'd said a few nights before he left for the big night. He stood behind my desk and massaged my shoulders while I got caught up on billing. Everyone hated drunk Bodhi. Alcohol made him more obnoxious than he already was, and he had even less of a filter. His mouth had gotten him beat up and kicked out of more bars than I could count. So many of Colton and Bodhi's college stories revolved around getting Bodhi out of trouble. I considered calling my best friend Garrett and asking her what she thought I should do about the entire situation, but I already knew what she'd say. We'd met in graduate school while we were both earning our psychology degrees, and Garrett never took off her therapy hat. In true therapist fashion, her question to any big decision would inevitably be, "What do you think you should do?" Because Garrett was one of those therapists who believed we all held the answers to our own questions within, and identifying your own voice was the most important skill you could hone. But I didn't know what to do. The only two things I wanted to do at the moment were call Caitlin and spy on my husband. Unfortunately, I had a doctor's appointment to get to, and then I had to complete all my clients' charts, so I couldn't. I had to go play adult until I could get back to playing detective again. Colton tapped away on his phone sitting across from me at a local restaurant later that evening. He'd been preoccupied since he got home from work. Probably with everything going on with Bodhi. "Everything okay, hon?" I'd asked him earlier. "Everything's fine," he'd said, even though something was obviously wrong. Normally, a blanket statement like that would have driven me crazy, but not tonight. I let it go without saying another word. I wasn't ready to talk about what was happening yet either. I searched his face for clues as to what he was feeling or thinking, but I couldn't tell. It'd been so bizarre listening to Caitlin's session and realizing she was talking about my husband. He was one of the married men she discussed. I hadn't felt embarrassed when she was describing her clients that day, but I was mortified in retrospect. It's no surprise Caitlin only did a few parties a semester. That was the gig. The entire reason she did it. The job didn't require her to be in a club every night, and she could focus on school. One party a month. I was astounded the first time I found out how much she made. The first time we discussed it, it led us into a conversation about how much Black China got paid for her feet pics on OnlyFans. I felt no judgment toward Caitlin, but plenty toward the privileged married men who hired her. That's how Caitlin had described the guys at the party she worked. Men bored with their lives and their wives. And I was the wives. One of them. Was that how Colton really saw me? I'd been so much fun and spontaneous in the beginning, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, but that's how I thought it worked. Everyone put their best foot forward in the beginning. I stared at Colton, wondering if he thought I was dumb. Was that the problem with men and the way they treated women? Or was it our problem, being the ones who played dumb so they wouldn't be threatened by us? I wished I could teleport myself inside Colton's brain and see what was in there. It was impossible to imagine he wasn't as tortured as I was about not being able to talk about this. But what if he wasn't? He might not even be thinking about me. I couldn't wait to get inside his phone. I was dying to know about the conversations he'd had with Bodhi today. There was no way they hadn't talked. None. Plus, I wanted to go through his phone the same way I went through Caitlin's sessions. A thorough look from all the way back to the bachelor party until the present. I felt like I'd finally have all the pieces then and I could decide what to do. But he'd barely taken his eyes off it all night. Was it because he was texting Bodhi? Hey, babe, I think you passed last night's headache on to me. Do you think we could finish up and head home early tonight? I asked, taking a small sip of my wine. Of course. You want to just have them box up our food and we can head out? He finally lifted his head from his phone, and concern filled his face. No, that's fine, I said. We can still eat, but I want to skip the movie, if that's okay. Of course, babe. Whatever you need, he said, slipping his hand into mine and giving it a squeeze. I loved how he still reached for me even after all these years and everything we'd been through. We hurried through dinner, but it took him forever to come to bed, even after I'd asked him to come upstairs and rub my head. Usually, playing with my hair made him just as sleepy as it did me, the perfect ploy to get into his phone faster. But not tonight. He was wide awake, even after he'd finished. Something was up. I rolled over and gazed up at him just as he was getting off the bed to head back downstairs. I reached over and grabbed his arm. He turned to look at me. I gave him that smile. On a Tuesday night, when you have a headache? He asked, as shocked as I was by my behavior. But I was willing to pull out all the stops for a look inside his phone. There was no better way to ensure he fell asleep. Within minutes of crawling underneath the covers, he was snoring on the pillow beside me. He'd be dead to the world for at least the next 20 minutes. Now was my chance. I scrambled over his body and pulled his phone from the pocket of his pants he'd tossed on the floor. I was giddy and lightheaded the moment I touched the screen. Finally! I scrolled all the way back in Colton's text history to where he and Bodhi first mentioned Lexus Chardonnay. The spot in February where Bodhi shared her name and that he'd booked her. Then I skimmed their texts in the weeks leading up to the bachelor party. But there was nothing relevant until that weekend. That's when the story got started. Sunday morning, the day after the big party. Bodhi texted Colton.
Are you up?
I am, but what the hell are you doing awake this early? It's not even 7.
Bro, I fucked up. I fucked up big time, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. You gotta come meet me.
What happened? Are you okay?
I'm okay, but it's bad. I did something really stupid. Why the fuck am I so stupid?
Just chill. Tell me what happened.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. God, I messed up. What's wrong with me?
Bodhi, what happened?
I can't text it.
I'm getting out of bed now. Where are you?
In the lobby.
Ours?
Yes.
Meet me at the Starbucks in 10 minutes.
My stomach flipped. Something about the reality of that moment being right there in front of me made all of it real in a way it hadn't been seconds ago. Bodhi had woken up after the bachelor party feeling what we'd all felt at some point in our lives. Hungover and humiliated. The dreaded morning after. You could feel the remorse and regret even through his brief exchanges with Colton. The sound of his footsteps as he made the walk of shame back to his hotel from wherever he'd been that night. Bodhi and Colton didn't discuss anything about the incident the rest of the day. Colton barely texted outside of the messages he sent to me and the ones in their bachelor party group text. He and Bodhi had both been active in that one with everyone else, but nobody said anything that suggested Bodhi had hooked up with Alexis. All they talked about was meeting for brunch before they left to make the drive home and how long it might take. Bodhi had obviously met Colton at Starbucks and told him what happened in person. Otherwise, they would have messaged each other more. I didn't have to read much further for them to continue their conversation, though, which meant it was still digging at Bodhi. He texted Colton as soon as they got home that evening.
I still can't believe I did that. I've worked so hard to be different, to not be that guy. And then I just throw it all away like an idiot.
You screwed up, but one mistake doesn't mean you're a terrible person.
You have to say that. You're my family. That's not how Phoenix would feel if she knew. It'd be over. Who cheats on their pregnant wife?
An asshole. You're an asshole, but you'll live.
Thanks.
Anytime. That's what I'm here for.
I set the phone down on my lap. Rage surged through me. I'd wanted to believe that Bodhi hadn't crossed over into real infidelity. Maybe he had just been inappropriately gropey or crude with his comments toward Lexus. His drunken idiot self. But my last shred of denial was obliterated. I immediately felt the weight of the impact. And the secret. I took a deep breath, then brought my gaze back to Colton's phone. Bodhi picked up their conversation Monday morning.
I can't stop thinking about it. I think I'm just going to tell Phoenix. I have to. I can't handle this.
What's going on? Did something else happen?
I've been on the toilet since 3. My stomach is all messed up. I haven't slept since Saturday. I keep replaying that night over and over again, thinking about what I should have done different, trying to figure out what the hell I was thinking. I'm losing my mind.
That's guilt, bro. That's all that is.
I've never felt anything like this.
I'm glad you have a conscience. I was beginning to wonder. LOL.
I'm so pissed at myself. Like, genuinely mad. I screwed my whole life up over a stripper? What's wrong with me?
You're finally turning into a man, little cousin.
Shut up. It's not funny. I just need to tell Phoenix. Beg for her forgiveness.
I don't know if you should.
Really?
You can't tell her. Not if you want to stay together. At least not now. Not when she's pregnant and so vulnerable. If you love her at all, you keep your mouth shut and your secret's safe with me. But only if you promise one thing.
What?
It has to be a one-time thing. You can never do anything like this again, ever. You understand me? That way, if down the road, some years it comes up again, maybe you share it with her. By then, she'll know you're a good guy. You were just young and dumb.
Maybe you're right. God, why am I like this?
You screwed up. Just never do it again. That's how you make this better.
Then their conversation just stopped. Like someone had gotten pulled away or interrupted. How could you just end it there? I quickly tapped over to Colton's call history. Maybe one of them had called the other one. Decided it was too important a conversation to have over text. But nothing was there either. That was the end. Both of them just content to leave it at that. Unless there was some cousin subtext that I didn't understand. So, Colton was the one that told Bodhi not to tell Phoenix. A move I never would have predicted. It was so out of his character. We'd had those conversations in the past. Every couple has. All the various cheating scenarios. What would you do if... fill in the blank. His answers always included telling the full truth. Transparency. His moral thinking was always so black and white. I didn't think he knew how to exist in the gray areas. He'd never professed to be one of those people that believed you shouldn't tell people things to protect them, to spare them from hurt. And I'd never believed that logic before either. I lied to protect you sounded a lot like I lied to protect myself from getting caught because there might be harsh consequences. Made me wonder, were there things Colton had done in his past? Things he'd kept secret in order to protect me? I scrolled through more texts and didn't find anything relevant until Friday. That's when Bodhi brought it up again. He really couldn't let it go. He was becoming quite the tortured soul, and for a brief second, I almost felt bad for him, until I remembered what he did. The first mention of Lexus contacting Bodhi came a few days later. I quickly did the math. 9 days after the party. That's when Lexus reached out. That was the last text between Bodhi and Colton for almost 3 days. But I went back to Colton's call history and this time saw that Bodhi and Colton were on the phone constantly, every day, multiple times. One of their phone calls was almost an hour, and Colton hated talking on the phone, so it had to be important. I would have given anything to know what was happening during those gaps. Their next text exchange didn't come until the end of the week.
She's gotten into everything. This bitch is crazy. She's emailing me, all my emails too, not just personal. She calls me, leaves messages, voicemails, in this weird, creepy AI voice.
She'll stop. Just give her time.
What the hell makes you think she's going to stop? How can you be so calm?
Because it's not happening to me. I could be more rational. She's just messing with you. They probably do it all the time. The other girl there was giving Scott a hard time the whole party, so I'm not surprised.
I blocked all her stuff, but she keeps switching numbers. But then I stopped because I want to know if it's her. I don't want any surprise attacks in front of Phoenix. I want her flagged. I saved her on my phone as Psycho.
Stop responding to her at all. Totally ghost. Ooh.
The fact that you can joke right now makes me want to punch you in the face.
I have to go back to work.
Then, Bodhi started sending Colton screenshots from Lexus. The first one stopped me in my tracks. Does your wife know what we did? The first direct mention of Phoenix. You could feel the seriousness of her threat. The hairs on the back of my neck tickled. Bodhi sent another screenshot quickly after that. How would your wife feel if she found out? For the next few days, Bodhi sent Colton an onslaught of screenshots, showing hundreds of texts sent from Lexus. One right after the other, no breaks. One of them was a picture of Phoenix taken from her Instagram page, so there was no mistaking exactly who she was referring to and threatening in her text. That's when Bodhi started getting scared she was dangerous. But Colton told him to ignore her, not to worry. So that's what Bodhi did. He stopped responding at all. That's when she got mad. Her text to him quickly shifting tone. He shared the most alarming ones with Colton. How long are you going to ignore me? What did I do to make you so mad? I can tell you miss me. It was so hard to imagine that all of this was happening just weeks ago and Colton said absolutely nothing about it to me. Just as difficult to imagine Caitlin being behind Lexus's texts. Her messages grew more disturbing the longer he went without answering. Hundreds of them, all saying the same things. Don't you dare ignore me. Do you have any idea who I am? What I'm capable of? There were so many, Colton stopped commenting on the screenshots over the next few days. Until the following morning, the most alarming one yet. No explanation this time, just another screenshot. Men like you deserve to die. That was 4 days ago. Less than 48 hours later, she'd keyed Phoenix's car. Chapter 9. I decided to reschedule my morning patients. All I could think about while emailing them was the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for OCD. Have you ever missed work because of your obsessions? Spent more than an hour engaged in your repetitive behavior? But this wasn't the same thing. That's not what was happening. Not this time, anyway. My family was in real danger. I was protecting my sister. Even if Phoenix had spent the majority of her life hating me and not wanting me around, blood was still thicker than water in my book. Part of me would always be 10 years old when it came to Phoenix. Eagerly sitting next to her on the couch, waiting for any little opportunity to play with her. Watching her do her makeup through the crack in her bathroom door like she was a famous celebrity and I was her biggest fan. I wanted to be just like her when I was a kid. My inner child still did. I dug out Colton's old iPad. He rarely ever used it. I wasn't even sure why he had one. Once I'd moved into the renovated office in the backyard, he'd naturally moved into my old space upstairs. Over the years, it turned into more of a man cave than an office, though. He went in there to watch golf and WWE fights. I didn't always mind having sports on in other areas of the house. Half the time on Sundays, I was the one turning on the football games. But golf was excruciating, and I couldn't stand the WWE fights he and his friends were obsessed with. I wiped the iPad screen and pressed the power button. He'd be able to see my activity if he happened to check which devices were logged into his accounts. That's what it'd come down to in the end. The only way Colton had to prove I was lying to him was to spy on me, the same way I spied on him. After our last big fight, he'd created an entire slide deck showing all the different devices and accounts of his that I'd logged into, including the dates and times. There were pictures of me outside of his office that he'd taken from the inside, watching me while I watched him. Screenshots of where I'd hacked into his emails, records of failed login attempts. He had it all. Stuff I didn't even know you could get. That was the thing about that last ultimatum. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. There was no swearing, no begging, not an ounce of understanding or emotion left either. He spoke in a complete monotone voice as he laid all his materials out in front of me, right there on our dining room table. Proof that I'd been doing everything he'd accused me of doing for years. All of my lies exposed. I won't live this way anymore. Get yourself together, or this marriage is over. That's all he said before walking calmly out of the room. I assumed he was just going upstairs, but he left the house. For 67 days. That's how long he'd stayed at Bodhi's. It'd been excruciating, and I never wanted to go through that again. I'd gone to therapy twice a week because I couldn't lose him and was willing to do whatever it took to get better. I let out a slow, deep breath, waiting for all his apps to load on the screen. Colton will understand. Colton will understand. That's what I repeated to myself like it was my new affirmation for the week. Once this was all done and over with, I'd tell him everything. I'd take him through all of it from start to finish, explaining what was happening and my decisions at every step, describing exactly what I'd done and why. Like his favorite sportscasters announcing the play-by-plays of the big fights he watched. Then, he'd understand my actions. And my next move, which was to answer the question, who was in the most danger? Was Caitlin's roommate right to be concerned about her mental health? Caitlin had spoken so freely with me about the men at the party. I couldn't imagine she'd leave out something like the fact that she was harassing one of them. What if Caitlin's roommate's concerns were valid? Could Caitlin be deeply unstable right now, threatening Bodhi? Unable to recognize the difference between fantasy and reality? Maybe she thought she was telling the truth in our sessions? Except, how could I have missed signs that had gotten that bad? I tried to cut myself some slack. Functional psychosis could be difficult to spot, especially in someone as smart as Caitlin. I toyed with the idea of taking all of this information to Phoenix. Over and over again. I circled back to her. I couldn't help it. She was who mattered the most in all of this. I tried to put myself in Phoenix's shoes. If Colton had been the one who slept with one of the strippers at a bachelor party, and it meant nothing other than drunken, stupid sex, would I have wanted to know about it? I thought hard about that one. It seemed like a no-brainer given my history, but I couldn't honestly say that I would. Not if he really loved me and never did it again. And there was no denying Bodhi loved Phoenix. I had seen that in those messages too. This would mark their story forever if Phoenix found out. Did I really want to take away my sister's chance at a happily ever after? I felt so conflicted about Colton's involvement too. He hadn't lied. Not one time had he come out and said anything untrue, and it wasn't like he was hiding something he'd done. But that didn't help me feel any better. It was still so unsettling. Because this was something huge, a really big deal going on in his life. Two of the closest people to us were being threatened, and he hadn't said one thing to me about it. Why wouldn't he tell me something like this? It's not like any of the messages from Bodhi specifically said not to tell me. Was that because Bodhi naturally assumed that Colton would tell me? or assumed he wouldn't. Maybe they'd always had some sort of bro code. Were there other things over the years that they'd kept to themselves? I couldn't stand the fact that Colton chose to keep this from me. He didn't share it. Maybe he thought I'd judge him and be angry that there were strippers at the party, despite telling Bodhi the opposite. Were there other important details in his life that he left out? Being with someone meant sharing all the intimate details of your experience, especially something this big. It didn't make sense, and even though I didn't want to admit it, my feelings were hurt. To be left out of something so important? How would Colton feel if I told Phoenix about Bodhi cheating? Would he put two and two together? He'd be so upset that I'd wrecked Bodhi and Phoenix's new family if he found out it was me. Since, according to Bodhi, he was doing all of this to protect Phoenix. What if it really had been a drunken mistake? The oldest and cringiest cliche in the book. Then there was the other part of me. The one that didn't know how Phoenix would respond if I did tell her. There was so much about my sister that I didn't know or understand. It'd only been since our mid-20s that Phoenix and I had formed a relationship again. She hadn't even gone home for the holidays over the years. She spent them with boyfriends or traveling with friends if possible. Inviting Phoenix to be one of the bridesmaids in my wedding was a huge deal. An attempt at bridging the gap between us. A peace offering of sorts. Hoping that maybe, as adults, we could find a way to be friends. I'd never seen the Bodhi plot twist coming. They met at our rehearsal dinner and spent the rest of the night flirting. I couldn't believe Phoenix had fallen for Bodhi's charm, especially since she wasn't anything like his other girlfriends. I had met plenty of them over the years, and Bodhi's girlfriends were all the same, beautiful with no brains. I like 'em dumb. He'd actually said those words once at dinner and then laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. But he'd meant it, and I was horrified. Phoenix's pregnancy announcement came 2 weeks after they got back from their honeymoon. And last month, they found out that they were having twin girls. To say I was jealous was an understatement. It felt unfair how easily some people got pregnant. It seemed like it was always the ones that weren't even trying, weren't sure if they wanted children. Meanwhile, people like me and Colton hadn't used protection since we'd gotten married and had never gotten pregnant once. Even though we desperately wanted kids, lots of them. I searched through the iPad. Colton was signed out of the iMessage app. Nothing would load. If I signed him in, would he get a notification that I'd logged into a new device? Would it show that I'd linked his messages back to the iCloud? My hands hesitated on the screen. My phone buzzed in my pocket with an alert. It was Colton.
Hope you slept well. Just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm so proud of you.
My chest squeezed with anxiety. Could he know what I was doing right now? My eyes scanned the room. Had he somehow sensed it? Maybe he'd gotten an alert that I logged in and he was testing me. Maybe he even had cameras in his office? I responded right away. I love you too, babe. God, I loved him and desperately wished I could tell him everything, but I held back. At the end of the day, Bodhi had cheated on Phoenix, but I never would have known about it if I hadn't gone into Colton's phone. There was no way to get around that fact. In my mind, it was reason enough to keep going. But what if he didn't understand? There was a chance he might not. Was it worth blowing up all of our lives over this? That's what it came down to, because it would. His, mine, Bodhi's, Phoenix's, my niece's, and they weren't even here yet. Maybe Caitlin's. This decision affected so many different people and was so multi-layered. But putting my own marriage and misbehavior aside, was it worth pressing forward for Phoenix's sake? If I was going to tell her, I was going to need proof. So there wouldn't be the he said, she said issue that had happened last time. That's how Bodhi had framed it the first and only time I'd expressed my concerns about him as a partner. He said that I had never liked him and was looking for any reason to turn Phoenix against him. I could only think of one way forward, and I had never done it before. not even when I was at my sickest and most obsessive. But I could install one of those spy tracker apps on Colton's phone, one that let me get all his text messages sent directly to my phone in real time, as if I was the one receiving the texts. The iPad was just too risky, and I couldn't miss any messages. Just as important, I'd also be able to go back in his history and take pictures of Colton and Bodhi's previous messages, which would be crucial for any conversation with Phoenix. I'd never let myself get to this point before. I knew all about the apps, of course. I'd studied them, read all the reviews. The women in the subreddit threads, wives who were doing the same things as me with their husbands, use them all the time. I couldn't believe I used to check those forums where that was the focus, spying on our spouses. But like anything else, it'd been so nice to know I was not alone with these thoughts and feelings. People everywhere were engaging in similar behaviors and struggling with similar issues. Reddit was one of the early things I'd had to give up for Colton. "Everyone in those groups," he'd screamed, pointing at my computer after he'd caught me chatting in the forums, "they make you think this is normal behavior. There's nothing normal about anything you're doing. You're not even one of them either. All of those women have been cheated on. They have really shitty husbands, terrible ones, but not you. You're like the biggest fraud in there. What do you tell them? Do you tell them I cheated on you?" I'd shaken my head at him, furious that I'd been caught after being so careful. He wasn't even on social media. He was just completely indifferent to it. He got on Facebook in college right along with everyone else, but he'd posted only a handful of times and didn't migrate to Instagram. How was he supposed to understand what it was like to seek support online? But I couldn't dwell on that now. It'd been my hard line in the sand, installing spy tracker apps. But now, I was going to cross it. Chapter 10. Installing the spyware was surprisingly easy. I thought I'd have to download it on Colton's phone first, but all I needed was his Apple ID. I watched in equal parts excitement and shame as all his text messages loaded onto my screen. Almost as if they were mine, just slightly blurry. I couldn't help myself. I had to test it. So I texted him. "Hey, babe. Just wanted to say I'm thinking about you, and thanks for being so sweet earlier. XO." I quickly switched over to the app. There it was, my sent text reflected back to me. I waited for a response, but the minutes dragged without anything. Not surprising, he could get tied up in meetings at the office for hours at a time. But what was I going to do? Sit here and stare at my phone all day? There had to be a way to turn on notifications. Just as I swiped to the settings, his message filled the screen at the same time my phone buzzed with a notification.
Hey, you. Can't wait for this weekend to hang.
The app worked. It actually worked. Somewhere around lunchtime, the realization hit me. Even though I had access to every message Colton received on his phone, I didn't want to sit there and read them all. I had no desire to go through his phone or any of his other apps either. The only thing I cared about and paid attention to was the thread between him and Bodhi. Surprisingly, it wasn't even hard to ignore everything else. Maybe that meant I truly had changed. All the work I'd done on my issues had paid off. Or maybe I finally trusted Colton. After all these years. Who could fault me for protecting my family? Maybe there would be a real silver lining in all this mess. Reading his texts and seeing into his inner psyche made me confident about him and his feelings toward me in a way that nothing else ever had. Not even becoming his wife. That had been the ultimate commitment. But my dad had stomped on the sanctity of marriage. The only reason Colton wanted Bodhi not to tell Phoenix was because he valued family as much as me. His responses to Bodhi had surprised me in the beginning, but it hadn't taken long to realize he was steering his cousin in a certain way to protect Phoenix, to help keep their family together, and there was nothing I loved more than a family man. Halfway through my first afternoon session, my phone buzzed with an alert. I glanced down where the phone was strategically tucked underneath my thigh so I could peek whenever I needed. Bodhi's name lit up the screen, then Colton's. It continued going off, and I anxiously made it through the remainder of the session, doing my best not to keep looking down as the phone vibrated against my leg. As soon as my client left, I locked the door and jumped right into their messages.
She wants money.
Huh? What do you mean?
Exactly what I said. She filmed the entire thing, somehow. I don't know how she did it. That other girl must have gone into the hotel room and set up a camera or something, or hers was hidden. I don't know. This is bad. Answer your phone. I'm freaking out.
I can't right now. I'm in the middle of a meeting. Why do you always have your crises when I'm slammed at work? LOL.
I'm glad you think this is funny.
Bro, obviously you aren't giving her money. That's ridiculous. That's why I'm laughing.
I might have to. What else am I going to do?
What are you talking about? You're not actually considering giving her money.
I am.
Bodhi, you are not doing that. Now you're the one being ridiculous.
She's threatening to show the video to Phoenix. She said she'll send it to all the contacts in my phone. Everyone I work with, my family. Imagine my mom if she sees it.
That's not happening. She doesn't even know you or your friends. She just got your number through the app somehow, and she's trying to scare you.
She knew enough about me and who I was to follow Phoenix to Target and key her car. And you know how women are. They can figure out anything.
Dude, this isn't taken. Nobody cares that much.
You'd care if it was happening to you.
I'm not trying to fight with you in the middle of a strategic planning meeting. Don't send that woman any money for any reason, period.
If someone had a video of you and was threatening to send it to Jenna, you'd do anything you could to try to keep that from happening. I know you would.
I wouldn't be in this position because I never would have cheated in the first place. Definitely not with a stripper, so no, I wouldn't do the same thing as you.
You're such a dick.
I'm just being honest and you know it.
Whatever. I have to do something. This woman cannot ruin my life over one stupid mistake.
My suggestion? Don't fix one stupid thing with another stupid thing.
But she obviously needs money. Otherwise, why would she be stripping to begin with? Maybe if I just pay up, she'll go away. At least now I know what she wants. It's actually a relief. Before, I thought she was just crazy.
It's not like this is a kidnapping ransom, dude. Think about it. She's probably already shared and saved the video. Big deal if she deletes it from her phone. You literally have zero assurance that she won't send it around anyway. Or insist you keep paying her. Nothing good comes out of this.
I still have to try. I think it's more stupid to not try.
How much is she asking for?
$50,000.
OMG, absolutely not. Let me find a way to get out of here and call you back. This is too much.
Chapter 11. $50,000? Bodhi had that kind of money? Even if so, it was unfathomable that he'd hand it over without consulting Phoenix first. But in the next moment, I wondered how much I would pay to save my family and reputation if the roles were reversed. I couldn't help thinking I was like Colton. I wouldn't have gotten myself in this position to begin with. If Caitlin had a video, then she could have easily gone to the police, and not the campus police, the real police, and given them a statement. Heck, she could have given them the video, proven that her stalker was real. They would have been able to identify the man with all the other information she had about him. So why didn't she? Was she too embarrassed to be seen having sex? Her biggest fear was being exposed. So maybe she was too afraid to get out somehow. Why didn't she bring it up in any of our discussions? That's the part that still really bugged me. Caitlin had always been so open and upfront with me about things. We'd built a real foundation of trust. At least I thought we had. I wasn't so arrogant as to think I couldn't be fooled. It was always possible. But Caitlin was a fairly well-rounded individual despite everything she'd been through. And she didn't have the personality disorder indicators that you typically see in someone who was hiding things and playing games in therapy. Bodhi said there was another woman there, and Caitlin had told me once that she never booked singles. A new theory took shape. Was it possible that woman was the one threatening Bodhi, and she was using Caitlin's Lexus Chardonnay identity to protect her own? Maybe I should just call Caitlin and ask about it all. I felt guilty about the idea, because even though I wanted to make myself believe my intentions were therapeutic, the only reason I'd be calling Caitlin again would be to get information about the situation with Bodhi. Except the only person who'd know I was calling Caitlin for personal reasons and technically skirting the ethical lines of dual relationships was me. Could I live with my own guilty conscience if I went through with it? On the flip side, could I live with myself if I didn't, and Caitlin actually hurt Phoenix or caused damage to her family? No, I couldn't. I quickly pulled up Caitlin's contact information on my phone and pressed call before I could change my mind. The call went straight to voicemail, but the mailbox was full, so I couldn't leave a message. I pressed end. A sense of dread filled my body. Stop it, I admonished myself. People let their voicemails get full all the time. It didn't mean anything. But something felt off. My guts twisted. I was so conflicted, but I'd come this far. I couldn't stop now. I decided to text her a voice note. They disappeared after they played, so that might be better than leaving a voicemail anyway. Especially if she didn't want anyone to know about this. Hi, Caitlin, this is Jenna Richardson. I noticed that you've missed your last few sessions, so I was just calling to check on you, make sure everything's okay. I know I already called you a few weeks ago and left a message, but you were pretty upset during our last session, so I'm just following up another time. Could you just give me a call back when you get a chance, just to let me know you're okay? No pressure to continue treatment with me if that's not what you want. Thanks. I hadn't planned on saying that last part about calling me back. I was just going to leave it up to her. But I didn't regret it. My heart raced. I saved Caitlin as a contact on my personal cell so that I'd recognize her if she called. I never used my personal phone with clients, but I'd delete it when it was over. I slipped my phone into my pocket and grabbed my keys to go meet Colton at the gym. We'd been working out together for the past 3 months, something that was new in our relationship. We'd always worked out alone before, mostly because we were different types of workout people. He was a CrossFit guy, while I was more of a yoga and Pilates girl. He'd spent years trying to get me inside the actual gym, but I'd always been scared lifting weights would make me too bulky. He'd promised it wouldn't, and I'd finally given it a chance once he moved back home. Not because I believed him, but because our therapist encouraged us to find new activities that didn't have any emotional triggers from our relationship prior to the separation. Working out together was perfect because it was neutral territory for both of us. He was impatiently waiting for me in the lobby with his bag slung over his shoulder, shifting his weight back and forth on his feet. I waved and rushed over to greet him. I gave him a hug and a quick peck on the lips. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. My client ran over. The lie rolled easily off my tongue without my thinking about it. No worries, he said, grabbing my hand and heading toward the free weights on the other side of the gym. We were doing upper body tonight. Triceps, biceps, back, and lats. Just as we passed the treadmills, my phone buzzed, and Caitlin's name flashed across the screen. I panicked, thought quick. Oh, shoot, I forgot my water bottle in the car, and you know I can't work out without it. I'm gonna go grab it, but don't wait for me, okay, honey? Just go ahead and get started, I said, kissing him on the lips and practically bolting for the door before he had a chance to respond. I was already lying to him. 2 lies in under 3 minutes. It was such a slippery slope. This is what happened last time. What always happened. But I didn't care about any of that right now. I pressed accept. Hello?
Hi, Jenna. It's Caitlin. You left me a message?
I did. Thanks for calling me back. I really appreciate it. I've been worried about you. Normally, I don't reach out multiple times to clients when they miss a session. You know me. I'm a very non-codependent therapist. But you were so upset the last time we met and you walked out, so I just wanted to make sure you're all right.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't have a bunch of time because I'm running to class, but you sounded worried in your message, and I didn't want you to worry about me. I'm sorry I was such a mess the last time I came to see you. I'm doing much better now.
No, don't be sorry. Please don't apologize. I didn't reach out to make you feel bad. Your behavior during our session and then leaving were just so out of character for you that I thought I should check in. Are you okay?
Yeah. It's been, a month since I've seen you? Honestly, that almost feels like another lifetime ago. I'm doing so much better now. Everything changed once I took my power back from that night.
Which night?
The night of the last bachelor party I worked.
The one Stan was at?
Yes. I haven't been totally honest with you about the party, Dr. Richardson. I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is a judgment-free space, same as my office. Do you want to tell me what happened?
I think I'm ready to talk about it, and maybe I could use your advice. But I don't have time right now because I'm almost to the lab, and I'm going to lose you as soon as I pull into the parking garage.
Do you want to call me back later, after you get done?
I can't. I have class until 9, and then I'm meeting with my anatomy study group for the rest of the night. Can you call me in the morning before my first class?
Sure. Yes, of course.
My first class is at 8, so it'd be like 7:30? Is that too early?
No, that's fine. Totally works for me. I'll talk to you then.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good night.
You too.
I hurried back across the parking lot. Finally, Caitlin admitted she hadn't been honest about the party. Things were falling into place. Was she going to confess to harassing Bodhi? Or was this still about Stan? Was this the moment she admitted that she made him up? At least the part about him scaling the building? The whole Stan thing had felt off from the beginning. It's why I had always struggled to believe her. I should have gone with my instincts. I pushed open the gym doors and dashed over to Colton. He was doing bicep curls in front of the mirrored wall next to the towel station. My heart pounded hard, as if I'd been working out with him, all from the adrenaline of doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. I didn't know how I was going to get through the night pretending like nothing was wrong, as if I wasn't counting down every second until 7:30 in the morning. "Everything okay?" Colton asked, catching my eyes in the mirror and pausing a beat in his reps while he stared at me. He was always so perceptive, sensitive to the slightest shifts in my behavior or mood. "Totally fine," I said, turning around quickly and searching for the 20-pound dumbbells. I slipped on my weightlifting gloves, stretching my fingers through the holes. "Where you at?" We easily slid into our routine, and I focused on the exercises, paying careful attention to all of my muscles. It was the most productive workout I had in weeks because I didn't allow my mind to stray from the task. I didn't dare. Not with Colton looking into my eyes every 2 seconds. He knew me better than anyone else, and he'd know something was up immediately. I wasn't ready to answer his questions. Not until I talked to Caitlin again. Chapter 12. My second call to Caitlin was a lot like my second peek in Colton's phone. I knew I'd officially crossed over the line. There was no reason or need to call Caitlin as her therapist. In fact, I had a very strict no outside contact with clients rule, and definitely no calling from home or my personal number. I had to maintain strict boundaries in a town so small, not to mention HIPAA. Colton hadn't seemed to notice anything amiss between us last night. He'd made dinner while I hopped in the shower after our workout, and we'd settled in front of the TV to eat since it'd already gotten so late. He cuddled up next to me after we finished like nothing was wrong, but I felt it. I felt my dishonesty, A corroding thread between us even if he didn't. 7:30 might be early for some, but I was up before sunrise. I'd already worked out, showered, and put a load of laundry away by that time. Caitlin picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting for my call. Morning. I think this is the earliest we've ever spoken.
Yeah, it is. But I've already been up for hours. I barely slept last night because I was so nervous about this. I really want to be honest with you, but I'm so scared you'll judge me.
I understand how frightening and vulnerable it can be to share such intimate things with another person, but please know that I'm not judging you, no matter what you say. Nothing you tell me will change my perception of you.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Okay. Well, the last party that I did, the one where I met Stan, I did a private dance for one of the guys there. Away from everyone else in one of the hotel rooms. I don't usually do them. I actually never have before, but honestly, the money was really good, and he offered me cash.
It's okay, Caitlin. Keep going.
I figured since the room was right next to the living room, we'd be fine. There was security right outside the door. At least there's supposed to be. I don't know what happened. Maybe he went away. The music was so loud. So much of it I don't remember.
Was there any chance you were drugged?
Not unless they pumped something into the air, because I don't drink anything they give me. I always bring my own bottled water for exactly that reason. Trust me, I'm very cautious. That's why I feel so stupid. Anyway, we get to this room, and before I even started the dance, he grabbed my wrists and threw me down on the bed. I didn't want it to happen. You know? I said no. Told him to stop multiple times. I screamed, but he slapped his hand over my mouth so hard I saw stars. That's when I knew he could hurt me. Really hurt me. I just went dead fish. It was like my soul left my body. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Like, I couldn't even tell you how much time passed from the moment he touched me until it was over. It could have been seconds, but it could have been hours.
That's a very common response for victims. Exactly what you're describing. The disorientation of time that goes along with the disassociation.
It's so weird to think of myself as a victim, though. Like, I literally can't stand to even hear you say it. The idea that I've been victimized by a man like that I'm just another statistic. It makes me furious. Can I tell you a secret?
You can tell me anything.
I used to be proud. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. Like, other women just didn't work as hard as I did at keeping themselves safe. I know that's so terrible to say, but I was proud of the fact that I'm 26 and I've never had any sort of sexual assault. Nobody's ever gotten me. I've always been so careful, even doing what I do. And then I think about other women. This is exactly how they felt. Because they were careful too. And sometimes, no matter what you do.
I'm so sorry, Caitlin.
It really messed me up. All that stuff my brain did automatically. There wasn't any conscious thought on my part of like, this is what I'm going to do to survive this. That's what's so weird about the experience. That so much of it, even my body's own reaction, was outside of my control. While he was on top of me with his shirt off, my eyes just went to this elaborate snake tattoo he had wrapped around his side. It was so colorful. All these bright orange and purple scales just dancing in front of my face. Almost like lights. I actually remember thinking, that's so pretty. Then the snake had this big head with huge fangs coming out of the mouth, and I don't know. I just put myself into the tattoo. Right into the snake and stayed there. Even after it was over. Dr. Richardson? Did I lose you?
No, I'm sorry. I'm still here. I'm listening. Go on.
Right, so once he got off me, I laid on the bed and told myself it didn't happen. That's what I kept telling myself over and over again while I stared at the tiles in the ceiling. This never happened. It will not affect my life. I said it over and over again until I could get up and act like it didn't. At first, I thought I was fine, but then Stan started messaging me, and that tweaked me out, so I stopped sleeping. Remember I told you about that? Olivia thinks I made him up because I wasn't sleeping, but that can't be the case because my insomnia began after Stan started harassing me, not before. Plus, I have like a zillion texts from him that I showed her, but she acted like it didn't matter, like I could have sent them to myself. Maybe seeing him at the apartment, but catfishing myself? I don't know. It's definitely made me question everything, though. What if I did make him up? Could my brain do that? Create Stan as a trauma response?
Do you think you made him up?
I don't know. I don't think so. But everything was so messed up and twisted in my head then. It's confusing.
It's okay if you did. The thing about the brain is that it's capable of doing so many different things, trying out strategies to protect itself. Also, there's a huge rebound effect from depersonalization and derealization, which is what it sounds like you're describing too. Are you sleeping now?
Finally, yes. My friends were really worried about me, just like you, and they forced me, gave me a Xanax, and refused to leave my bed until I was asleep. I slept for 16 hours and felt like a new woman when I woke up. Ever since then, everything has shifted. I refuse to let this guy take another second away from my life. He's not gonna get away with this. The moment I decided that, I started feeling better. I haven't looked back since, and it's been weeks.
That's great, Caitlin. Really.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so sick of men hurting us and just getting away with it. But you know what? We can change that narrative. I'm done being a victim.
Violence against women is a huge issue. It's part of the reason I do the work that I do.
I know you understand. I've always felt that about you, you know, that you get it. You don't have to tell me, but I have a feeling you've been through it. I can see it in your eyes. You have trauma eyes. No offense.
None taken. Again, I'd feel better about all of this if you went to the authorities.
Oh, I will. But first, I'm gonna make him pay.
What do you mean? What are you planning on doing?
I just want him to feel unsafe, you know? I want him to walk to his car in the parking lot with his keys in his hand, to look over his shoulder, share his location, be worried someone's gonna hurt him. I want him to have a taste of what it feels like to be afraid all the time. Maybe a little karmic justice, too, if I can make that happen. Look, I have to run because I'm going to be late to class, and my little mental breakdown put me way behind on coursework, so I really can't miss another one. But I'm feeling so much better. I really do appreciate you checking on me.
I'm glad to hear that, but I'm not real comfortable leaving the conversation this way. Do you think we could talk tomorrow? Any chance you could come in for an emergency session?
I can't do our regular time, but I could make 10 work if you're available.
That's perfect. Head to class and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.
I slowly raised my eyes to the picture on my desk. Our family trip to Hawaii last year. Me and Phoenix in our bikinis. Colton and Bodhi standing next to us, shirtless. Bodhi's snake tattoo coiled around his ribcage. Lots of people had snake tattoos, and the orange was a popular color. But the fangs about to sink into his heart, that part of the tattoo was custom made. I should know. I was there when he got the work done in Venice. I've probably seen it 100 times since then, with Bodhi always looking for a reason to take off his shirt. He loved showing off his tattoo and his perfectly chiseled abs. Caitlin said the man with the snake tattoo assaulted her. Bodhi assaulted Caitlin. And it wasn't just cheating. It was rape. Chapter 13. Waiting for the morning, again, was excruciating. I needed to do the right thing. I had no choice but to tell Phoenix about Bodhi. It was one thing if he was just a cheater, but being an abusive man and a violent criminal was something else entirely. I'd wanted to go over there yesterday as soon as I found out, but Phoenix wasn't feeling well and asked me to come today instead. Every minute dragged. I was so uncomfortable, so worried about all of them. Has Bodhi ever been violent with any of his girlfriends? I had asked Colton when we were in the bathroom brushing our teeth before bed. He was always the calmest at night. I waited exactly 15 minutes after he took his melatonin. His face blanched. What? That was the most random thing ever. I shrugged. I'm sorry, I was just wondering. Why are you wondering that about Bodhi? He raised his head from his sink. I stared into mine. He knows. Oh shit. He knows. Blink, smile, look normal. I silently instructed myself as the fake smile spread to my face, and I did my best to look innocent, thinking quickly on my feet, careful not to stumble. I was texting with Phoenix earlier today, and she was asking me all these questions about him, so it just got me thinking. Phoenix? You were texting with Phoenix? He cocked his head to the side and raised his eyebrows. Yes, I said. She's in touch a lot more since she found out she was pregnant. I told you, we're trying to get closer. And she was asking about him being violent? He turned off the faucet and put his toothbrush back in the drawer. No, but she was asking all kinds of things. She was all over the place today. You know how pregnant women get. I tried to laugh it off. He grabbed his glasses from the counter and shrugged. I try to stay out of Bodhi's relationships. I hadn't pressed it further. My heart ached. All night. Especially as the night stretched into the morning hours. I thought about waking Colton and telling him everything. I'd come so close multiple times. Once I'd even reached over and jostled his shoulder. He'd mumbled without opening his eyes. He looked so peaceful. I changed my mind immediately. Go back to sleep, babe. It's nothing. I'd planted a quick kiss on his shoulder and he'd rolled over. It was only fair to tell Phoenix first. That's what I reminded myself the next time I wanted to shake him awake. Phoenix was going to be the most damaged by this, not me, Colton, or anyone else. I might lose my husband over my behavior, but there were 2 unborn children involved with Phoenix, and I wanted to give her a chance to decide how she preferred to handle things. Kids were always first priority. So was family. A small part of me secretly hoped that if I somehow saved the day for Phoenix and helped her through whatever fallout would come from this, Colton would overlook how I'd become involved in the situation. I felt selfish for thinking that way. But it was impossible to not recognize the potential loss of my marriage, a relationship I'd worked so hard for. I hoped that risk would mean something to Phoenix. Show her how much she meant to me. At the end of the day, women had to stand by each other, protect one another. That's the way I had always lived my life. I faked sleep when Colton bent to kiss me goodbye on the top of my head at 6. He made a point to kiss me goodbye every time he left the house. It was one of the most endearing things about him. How could this sweet man be related to someone so deplorable? I refused to believe he knew any different. There was no way. I'd seen all their text messages. Nothing in them suggested that any part of the sexual activity had not been consensual. And why would Bodhi admit to that? I waited until I heard Colton's car pull out of the driveway before rolling out of bed. I hurried to make a coffee, dreading the day and what lay before me. I grabbed my cup of coffee and carried it into the shower. Maybe the shower would help wash some of the guilt off me. At least part of the awful day yesterday. I actually felt slightly better after I finished. The way a good shower can cleanse the soul. I'd scrubbed every part of myself. Clean teeth, freshly washed hair, slathered in lotion. I wrapped myself in towels, one on my head and one on my body, and walked back into the bedroom. My phone was vibrating on the nightstand. I'd forgotten to turn off my alarm. But it wasn't my alarm making my phone tremble against the wood. It was text messages coming from the spyware app. I dropped my towel and grabbed the phone.
It's going down, bro.
What are you talking about?
She texted me this morning. Wants to meet at some house in Oakhurst. I'm on my way to the bank now.
Are you serious?
Yep. Gonna shut this shit down for good. I want you to come with me, but she said I have to come alone. What do you think?
I don't care what she said. I'm going with you.
How should we do this?
We need to at least record it or something. Figure out a way to get proof you paid her off so she can't come back at you for more. Take down her license plate?
For sure.
There might be a bunch of dudes waiting to jump you when you walk in, so we've got to be prepared for that.
Right. Fine. I'm definitely bringing you.
When are you supposed to meet?
1. She said she'd give me the rest of the details after I had the money. I have to show her proof that I got it first.
Okay. Where are you meeting her?
She gave me an address. 11730 Jacks Avenue.
I waited for more. That was it? They weren't going to say anything else. Colton must be calling Bodhi right now. I raced to my closet and started throwing on clothes, getting dressed as fast as I could. I knocked over my coffee, racing out the door, sending the dark liquid splashing across the rug. Shit! I yelled, staring at the stain as it grew wider. I shook my head. I threw a shirt on the spot and quickly stomped on it before continuing my race outside. I didn't even slip on shoes, and the wet grass squished between my toes as I ran across the yard and into the garage. I quickly punched in the code at the door. Once inside, I made a beeline for my desk and jiggled the mouse, bringing my computer to life. I pulled up TheraCharts and typed Caitlin Walsh in the search bar. I scrolled through the records back to the beginning and clicked on the intake questionnaire. The demographic information was the first part of the form. I scanned it, easily locating Caitlin's address. 272 Beard Lane, apartment 19. I hadn't expected that one to match. I was looking for the second one, her emergency contact, Miles. Last I heard, he lived in a house with 3 other guys, and it could be in that same neighborhood. Caitlin was a smart young woman. It was highly unlikely she'd given a client any personal information that could be traced back to her, especially if she was trying to blackmail him. Maybe she'd enlisted help from Miles and his friends. 4 strong young men seemed like a good idea to me, especially if they were really trying to jump Bodhi. Miles Shaw, address 2810 Detroit Boulevard. No match. I logged off, all the adrenaline from moments ago gone. So I had no choice but to stick to the plan. Go to Phoenix's and break the news to her. Let her decide how she wanted to handle things and who she wanted to tell. At least she could have control over that part. And hopefully, my husband could take care of himself during whatever happened with the exchange. I got in the car and headed toward Phoenix's house. I was halfway there when my phone started blowing up again. I didn't even bother going to my personal text messages. I already had the app pulled up on my screen to show Colton and Bodhi's thread, and I could see it was them. I immediately pulled over to pay attention to what they were saying to each other.
Hey, she wants to do it now, and I'm almost there.
You're there now? You said 1.
I know, but she changed her mind. I'm fine with it, though. I didn't want to sit around and wait all day with $50K in my car anyway. Makes me too nervous.
I can't go right now. You have to wait for me.
You gotta get a move on it, bro. We already figured things out. I'm getting there early, before she expects me, just to see what the deal is. See who she goes inside with.
That's smart, but you can't go by yourself.
Like I was saying, you better hurry up.
I can't just leave my job whenever I want. Some of us have actual bosses and structure.
I have a boss. Me. LOL.
Seriously, you have to wait for me. I don't want you to get hurt.
I'm not gonna get hurt. I brought along a little something, just in case. Don't worry about me. I'm protected.
I'm going to leave in the next few minutes. I'll tell them Jenna had some kind of emergency and she's in the hospital. Just give me a couple minutes to get out of here, okay? Okay?
Yes, chill. Just pulled up and looks like I'm the first one here. I'm just gonna sit outside and see what we're up against.
Okay, don't get out of your car. I'll call you as soon as I get in the car. Don't go in there alone. I have a really bad feeling about this.
I'll wait for you, but you better hurry up because I hate having all this money on me.
Promise you'll wait.
Oh my God, we're not getting married. Call me when you're on your way.
Bodhi was protected. He had a gun. That's what that meant. He put the green squirt gun emoji after he said, "I'm protected." Bodhi with a gun was an absolutely terrifying thought. All bets were off. "Call hubby," I ordered Siri. My call went straight to his voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I tapped out a text to Colton. "Hey, I'm trying to call you. I really need to talk to you. It's important." Why wasn't Colton answering his phone or responding to my messages? My temperature rose, but I quickly calmed down. Colton had no idea I knew what was happening. He probably figured I was calling to remind him to pick up milk on his way home from work. Most likely he was busy making calls and trying to get out of whatever meetings he had scheduled for this afternoon. He might already be on his way to Bodhi or even on a call with him, hopefully talking him out of whatever terrible decision he was about to make. I texted Colton and called him again. Still no answer. It didn't necessarily mean anything. He was often away from his phone for hours at a time. Except, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something here. Something critical. Inexplicably and irrevocably wrong. I stopped the current drive in my navigation, abandoning the trip to Phoenix's, and quickly inputted the address Bodhi had given Colton earlier. If Colton wasn't going to answer the phone, I would meet him there. I had no idea what I'd do once I arrived. But I'd figure it out then. Chapter 14. I followed my phone's navigation to this unfamiliar part of town and slowed down as I neared the exact address, anxiously searching for any sign of Colton or Bodhi. The street was lined with family duplexes and old houses surrounding the abandoned meatpacking plant. Everything was beat up and run down, covered in a thick layer of dust. Why'd Caitlin bring them all the way out here? I'd obsessively checked my phone on the drive, but Colton and Bodhi hadn't sent any more texts. Nothing from Caitlin either. I called her on the way too, sent back-to-back frantic messages, both text and voice notes. I'd violated every ethical guideline about patient relationships at this point, but I didn't care. None of that mattered if Bodhi had a gun. I spotted their cars right outside the house on the left-hand side of the street. Colton's white Audi parked behind Bodhi's black Tesla. Both cars sparkling clean and looking brand new. They couldn't stand out more on this street, where every other house had boarded up windows and a notice on the front door. I pulled up behind them and stared at the red brick house. The long driveway was empty, just like the street, except for our vehicles. Where was Caitlin's car? Was it possible that we'd all arrived before her? I jumped out of my car and hurried across the street, even more anxious to get inside now. Caitlin got held up at the hospital all the time. She technically had a set schedule, but you couldn't control medical emergencies or how long procedures took. There was a chance I could de-escalate this entire situation and avoid the confrontation altogether. I sped up as I hit the driveway. But my hope was short-lived as the sounds of a struggle, crashing and banging, met me just when I reached the porch. I leapt up the 2 stairs in a single jump. Adrenaline flooded my chest as I banged on the door. "Colton! Bodie! Colton!" I screamed as I pounded. "Colton!" Nothing except the sounds of continued fighting. I grabbed the doorknob and to my surprise it easily opened, spilling me into the entryway. Dark wood paneling covered the walls. I raced through the dining room and into the living room where the tussling sounds were coming from. Colton's hands were gripped tight around Bodie's neck, and he had Bodie pinned on his back flat on the broken glass coffee table. Bodie flailed underneath him, twisting and kicking wildly as he clawed at Colton's hands. Shattered glass shards were everywhere. Bodie's face was beet red and straining. Everything popped out and pulsing. The muscles in Colton's arms bulged like Bodie's eyes. "Let go of him, Colton!" I screamed, but Colton just kept choking Bodie as he struggled against him. "Colton, stop! Let him go!" Colton slowly eased his grip on Bodie's neck, but he didn't release his hold on him or change his position. Every muscle in Colton's body and face stayed flexed as Bodie gasped for breath. "Jenna! Oh my God! Thank God, Jenna!" Bodie cried, heaving hard. "He's trying to kill me! He's trying to kill me!" "What's going on? What's happening?" I turned to face my husband. "Colton!" But Colton wasn't looking at me. His eyes were still fixed on Bodie. Spit bubbles formed at the corners of Bodie's mouth. "Let go of me, bro." Bodie could barely get the words out. That's how hard Colton was still pressing on his neck. His body trembled. "Colton, let go of him!" I ordered again, carefully stepping over broken glass. "He can't breathe!" I grabbed Colton's arm to yank him off, but Colton pulled back and flung his head up, glaring at me. "Get away from me, Jenna!" he yelled. Rage and something else, something I didn't recognize, contorted his face. I felt like I had no idea who I was speaking to. I took a step back. "I don't understand what's happening," I said, slowly trying to let the shock dissipate so I could think straight. "Where's Caitlin?" Silence. "Where's Caitlin?" I repeated, louder this time, like the reason they weren't answering was because they couldn't hear me. "How do you know about Caitlin?" Colton asked, blinking rapidly like he was finally registering my presence in the house. "Caitlin? That's her name?" Bodie asked, still out of breath. "Where is she?" I demanded. Colton glared down at Bodie, ignoring me again. His voice shook as he struggled to get the words out. "You killed her, you bastard! How could you kill her?" I took another step back, away from them both now. Not sure who I needed to be more afraid of. "Don't listen to him, Jenna. It was an accident. She fell." Bodie turned his head toward me as best he could under Colton's restraint. Blood dripped from his nostrils. His left eye was swollen shut. "I swear, it wasn't my fault. She wouldn't give me her phone or let me see anything in it, even after I gave her the money. That wasn't part of the deal. I just wanted to see the video, make sure it was deleted. All I did was reach for her phone. And that's when she tripped. It's not my fault. She hit her head." He jerked his gaze back to Colton. "She grabbed the gun, Colton. She could have shot me." I don't know what the hell is going on here, but I need one of you to tell me where Caitlin is now. My eyes furtively scanned the room. More paneling. Dingy white curtains. A blue backpack, likely the one holding the money, sat on the floor next to the TV. "He killed her, Jenna. That's what I'm trying to tell you." Colton said without taking his eyes off Bodhi. Why do you think I've got him like this? Caitlin wasn't dead. She couldn't be. No. Where is she? Caitlin! I shrieked, trying to keep it together. Calm down, Colton ordered. I whipped around to face him. Calm down? I scoffed, terrified. Call the police, Colton! What are you doing just standing there? Call the police! I spun around the room, searching for any sight or sign of Caitlin. Everything blurring and spinning, moving faster and faster, making me dizzy. Yeah, Colton. Why don't you tell her why we're not calling the police? Bodhi's voice was shallow and raspy. Shut up! Colton hissed at him, pressing his forearm into Bodhi's chest. I had to find her. Where was she? I turned and raced through the dining room into the kitchen on the other side of the house. Dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. Cupboards were open. Stacks of bills sat on the table. Old-fashioned vinyl chairs circled the table. No Caitlin. I circled back into the living room where Colton still had Bodhi pinned. How long were they going to stay like that? My anxiety mounted. I'm calling her, I announced, quickly pulling out my phone. I called Caitlin, putting the phone on speaker so they could hear everything too. Caitlin's phone rang out from behind them in the hallway. So she was here. And not responding. Oh, God. I darted around them and into the narrow hallway just as her voicemail picked up. I followed the sound of her voice to the bathroom at the end of the hallway. The door was wide open. A hole in the center, splintered like a fist had gone through it. Or maybe a small head. I rushed inside. Caitlin's body lay crumpled on the linoleum floor next to the toilet. I had never seen a lifeless body before, but I didn't need to search for a pulse to know she was dead. Blood pooled thick in the whites of her eyes. Vessels broken, no color. Her mouth contorted in horror and struggle. She'd clearly died terrified and fighting for her life. The Apple Watch around her wrist would show the exact moment she died, and every minute she'd struggled. I brought my hands up to my mouth to stifle the sound of my cries. What had Bodhi done? I quickly knelt beside her, blinking away tears. I still had to check for signs of life no matter what she looked like, just in case I was wrong. My fingers shook as I pressed them against Caitlin's neck. Clammy. No pulse. Why was her skin so clammy? I put my head down to her chest, holding my breath while I desperately listened for hers. Nothing. No movement. Her chest felt like a plastic dummy. She was gone. I stumbled back against the toilet, woozy and weak. Now you understand? Colton's voice called out from the living room. You see why my hands are around this bastard's neck? He did that. He did that to her. His voice had returned to normal, the one I recognized, that had asked me out on our first date to the coffee shop to study freshman year. That Colton. No wonder he tried to kill Bodhi. At the moment, I wanted to kill him too. I rose slowly. My jeans were wet. There was blood on my hands. I'd been so focused on Caitlin I hadn't noticed the fluids underneath her body. I'd knelt right in them. I stared at my hands. Am I in shock? Is this shock? My voice quivered. I was her therapist. Did you know that, Bodhi? And she was lovely. She came from nothing. Absolutely nothing. Her mom was a teenager who gave her up when she was young, and she had a rough life, but she didn't let any of that stop her. She was a third-year medical student, but I bet you didn't know that either. She wanted to work in pediatric neurosurgery. She might have cured childhood brain cancer, and you killed her. I didn't kill anyone, Bodhi said, still maintaining his innocence. Yes, you did. Colton's voice was furious, tight with rage. I heard you screaming at her as soon as I got to the door, yelling at her to give you the phone, to let you see the video. I heard things crashing around, all the screaming. Look around you. You beat the shit out of this room before you beat the shit out of her. He's lying. He set me up. He was working with her. He always has been. What are you talking about? Colton practically spat back at him. You're delusional. I eyed the two of them through the doorway. Colton still had Bodhi trapped, one arm around his chest, the other on his neck. Each guy waiting for the other to move. Caitlin was dead. Strong, determined, statistic breaker Caitlin. And I still didn't understand why. Bodhi's voice cut into the bathroom next. Why hasn't he called 911 then, Jenna? You thought about that yet? Because he's planning on killing me too. If you hadn't walked in the door, he would have already done it. Colton. His name just came out of my mouth. I didn't even know what I was asking him or what I wanted. Why is he still holding me down, Jenna? You're here now. The bad guy is outnumbered. Why wasn't that the first thing he said to you when you burst through the door? Oh, thank God, Jenna. Call 911. He didn't do any of that. He still hasn't. I didn't know what or who to believe. None of this made any sense. Caitlin was dead. That was the only thought that echoed through my head. The one thing I knew for sure. Why had Colton and Bodhi fought? Then I remembered there was still a gun in the house somewhere. Who had it? I had to take control. Stepping around Caitlin's body, I quietly pulled my phone out and dialed 911. Then, I turned the volume all the way down so they couldn't hear the dispatcher's voice on the other end. I didn't trust either man right now. I hoped the police could find me if I just left the line open. That the dispatcher wouldn't think it was a prank or a misdial. Hopefully they'd hear everything being said and draw the right conclusions. I tucked the phone in my pocket and stepped back into the living room. Colton and Bodhi turned to look at me. I kept my face straight. I looked totally calm as I inched my way around them and toward the door. Where are you going? Colton asked. His face dripped with sweat and exertion from keeping Bodhi restrained for so long. The same way it did at the gym during our workouts. I'm going to get help, I said loudly. Loud enough for the dispatcher to hear, I hoped. How long would it take for the police to get here? I'd wait for them at the end of the driveway because I couldn't stay in this house a second longer. The walls were closing in on me. She can't leave! You can't let her leave! Bodhi's voice was frantic and desperate. We've got to figure out the story here before we talk to anyone. You have to help me. She can't leave. Jenna, wait a minute. Colton called to me. His voice suddenly sweet. What story? Now those two were on the same team? I shook my head, disgusted, and rushed around Colton. He lurched to grab me, but that made him release his hold on Bodhi. And Bodhi sprang up from the table, heaving Colton off of him in one swift swoop. Colton flew backward, crashing into the bookcase. I screamed. Bodhi shoved me out of the way like I weighed nothing and raced to the couch as Colton scrambled to his feet and did the same. Bodhi threw himself on the floor next to the couch. Colton was right behind him. They crawled on their hands and knees, searching for something underneath. Colton's hands were cut, dripping blood onto the carpet. That's when I spotted it, right as Colton grabbed it. A handgun. Colton leapt to his feet and smashed the gun into the back of Bodhi's head. Don't move, he barked, hovering over Bodhi's body and digging his knee into Bodhi's back, flattening him onto his stomach on the floor. Bodhi gasped as the air left his lungs, but he went instantly still. All the fight disappeared with the revolver pressed against his skull. "Get help, Jenna," he sputtered. That's when I noticed the blood seeping out from underneath him. He must have fallen on a piece of glass. I kept my gaze on Colton and took one cautious step toward the door, trying not to make a sound so he wouldn't notice me. Would he let me leave? Settle down, I admonished myself like I'd done so many times in the past. This is Colton we're talking about. But this wasn't Colton. This was someone else. And this person was dangerous. I took another step. "What are you doing? Where are you going?" Colton asked, detecting my movement. I'm leaving," I stammered. My entire body shook with fear. I tried to control the tremors, but I couldn't. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Colton, please, just let me leave," I begged. Colton turned and pointed the gun at me, just as I was about to make a run for it. "I already told you, you're not going anywhere. Nobody's leaving this room unless I say so." I flattened myself against the wall. There was nowhere else for me to go. I put my hands in the air. "Please, put the gun down, Colton. Please, you're scaring me." I inched along the wall, movements barely perceptible. I struggled to keep control of my voice. "I'm going to walk out of this door, and you're not going to shoot me, okay? You're just going to let me go." I tried to sound brave. "Okay, Colton? You love me. Please don't hurt me. You don't want to do that." Colton spoke through gritted teeth. "I told you, you're not leaving." Suddenly, the front door crashed open behind me and footsteps pounded through the dining room. Within seconds, Phoenix burst into the living room. Oh, yes, she is. She's coming with me. Chapter 15. Everything stopped. Time stood still. Then, it moved in slow motion as Phoenix strode over to the men, fearless, like the gun in Colton's hand was a toy. "Don't come any closer," Colton yelled, the same way he'd yelled at me seconds ago, like he was on the edge of a building and thinking of jumping. He pointed the gun at Phoenix. Phoenix raised her hands in peaceful surrender, just like I was still doing. "I'm here to help," she said, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. "You can help by backing up and staying away from us." Colton waved the gun at her, then pointed it back down at Bodhi before raising it toward us again. The puddle of blood underneath Bodhi grew bigger. He let out a moan. "Colton, come on, it's me, Phoenix. You don't want to do this," she said with a sharp intake of breath like she just realized the gravity of the situation. "Get away from me!" He waved the gun at her again, and Phoenix quickly jumped beside me. "You don't know what I want." Phoenix's body went rigid next to mine. She gripped my jeans with her right hand while I kept my hands raised. My eyes darted everywhere, searching for a way out, listening for the police sirens. How long did it take to send someone? Could they still hear us on the other end of the line? "Colton, put down the gun." I said it loud enough that the 911 dispatcher on the phone in my pocket could hear, but not loud enough to make Colton feel threatened. I didn't want to push him any further. Maybe he'd seen Bodhi kill Caitlin, like actually watched it happen. I couldn't say what that would do to me, watching someone die in front of my face. I might snap too. "I know you're having a hard time wrapping your brain around this, babe, but nobody else needs to get hurt, okay? Can you just put the gun down and talk to me? Look at me, will you? Please, baby?" I felt just as much pressure as if I was talking someone off an actual ledge. Bodhi jumped in, He set this up. This is all his fault, Phoenix. I wanted to tell you everything from the beginning. I really did. Colton said I shouldn't. He told me that it was a bad idea. Phoenix didn't ask, tell me what? Because she already knew. How else would she have shown up here? She must have been snooping on her husband, too. He killed her, Phoenix, Colton announced with a vengeance. Phoenix recoiled from the news as if it had actually slapped her in the face. She brought her hand up to her cheek like it had left a mark. Lexus is dead? Her voice was a whisper. I didn't hurt her on purpose. I swear, I didn't, Phoenix, Bodhi cried, talking fast. Listen, you have to believe me. I just wanted to go through her phone to make sure she didn't still have the video on it. I was trying to protect our family, baby, that's all. I just wanted to protect my girls, but she wouldn't let me have the phone. She didn't want me to see it, and that was part of the deal. Otherwise, she would have kept blackmailing us. I couldn't let that happen. She tried to lock herself in the bathroom, and that's when she fell. She was never supposed to get hurt. It was an accident. Tears streamed down his cheeks. You know me, baby. I'm not a violent person. Phoenix was unmoved. Her face was stone. I want to see the video. What? Who cares about the video? Please, Phoenix, help me. Don't let him do this to me. Bodhi pleaded with her. You cared enough about the video to kill Lexus over it, Phoenix responded. Her name is Caitlin, I said softly. Oh my God, you're missing the point. Don't you want to know why she's dead and why he's got a gun pointed at me? Bodhi asked, shifting his focus to Colton. Forget the video. Get Caitlin's phone and look at her last call. I don't know what he's talking about. He can't take responsibility for anything, ever. You know how he is, Colton said with disgust, shaking his head. Phoenix's eyes skittered back and forth between Colton and Bodhi, the same way mine had done when I walked onto the scene. Where were the police? What if they'd called back and I missed the call? Maybe I should have just run, started screaming, but now I had to stay. I couldn't leave Phoenix. Let's just go in her phone and see what all the fuss is about. I'm sure it's on her, Phoenix announced decisively. She sounded just like our mother. How are we going to get the password? I asked at the same time it dawned on me that we didn't need it. We had Caitlin's thumbprint. We also had her face, but I wasn't sure that would work when her eyes were protruding out of her skull like that. Plus, all the blood had taken over the pupils. Come on. I gripped Phoenix's hand and we shuffled sideways around the men, never letting go of each other. I was fairly confident Colton wouldn't shoot us, but I didn't know for sure until we were all the way around them and headed down the hallway. Neither of us took our eyes off the men as I led us into the bathroom. Oh my God, what's that smell? Phoenix practically gagged as she covered her nose and mouth with her sleeve. The room smelled foul, like the body had already started to rot. Caitlin's phone lay next to her head by the toilet. If Bodhi had been after the phone, why had he left it here? What really happened? I knelt down next to Caitlin's body and Phoenix crouched beside me. Phoenix and I locked eyes. We were doing this. We were actually doing this. Without speaking, I grabbed Caitlin's right arm and lifted it up, holding out her wrist. Phoenix took the phone and brought it to her thumb, pressing down. The phone lit up immediately. I quickly dropped Caitlin's arm. Well, that was easy, Phoenix said and swiped open the phone. Let me explain, Bodhi called out like he sensed the moment we got into it. I already know everything you've said about her, Bodhi, Phoenix said definitively. How do you think I ended up here today? Just happened to be in the neighborhood? She shook her head. You think women are so dumb. I think that might be the most irritating part about you and all men like you. The thing that makes me the most mad? That you think I'm that stupid while you're the one running around acting like an idiot. And you think I believe your lies? She let out a diabolical laugh. And at that moment, I'd never been more proud of my sister. Baby, I've never lied. Never. If you've been snooping in my phone, then you know that I wanted to tell you about her from the beginning. But Colton told me not to tell you. He's the one that said we needed to keep it a secret. Did you see that text? Or how about the one where I'm like, I can't do this. The guilt is eating away at my insides, huh? Her face was softening. She was melting in front of me. His voice lulling her back under his spell. I could feel her anger dissipating. Either way, he did it, Phoenix. He hooked up with a stripper while you were pregnant. I blurted out, hating to phrase it that way when it was sexual assault. She'd find that out soon enough. The same stripper who's dead on this bathroom floor. My words snapped Phoenix back into reality. She tapped on the phone. Her face shifted. A mixture of surprise and fear quickly followed by sadness. Then, her eyes widened. Mouth contorted. A few seconds passed. Oh my God. Phoenix's face lost all its color. I had been waiting for the moment, expecting the shock. But it didn't make it any easier as I watched the information throttle her. I quickly wrapped my arm around Phoenix's waist, holding her up so she wouldn't collapse. This was what I'd been afraid of all along. The trauma response. What it would do to the babies. I pressed my mouth to her ear. Phoenix, I'm sorry. So sorry. This is awful. It's unimaginable, horrible. There are no words to describe it, but you're going to get through this, and you don't have to do it alone. I promise. I've got you. You just let me take care of you, okay? Why don't we leave now? Me and you. We've seen enough. We don't want any part of this. I kept all my focus on Phoenix. That's where I'd been heading this morning anyways. How all this began. We'll figure this out together. Let's just go home. Phoenix's body shook against me. Heat radiated from her. Sweat dripped down her back. She was breathing hard. I was so grateful I hadn't been the one to show her something so awful. I didn't need to be imprinted on another one of her most traumatic moments. I could be the one to help her recover, though. We just had to get out of this house. Come on, Phoenix. Let's go. I kept my arm around her and gently moved her out of the bathroom. We shuffled down the hallway. How could you do something like that? Phoenix asked the moment we stepped into the living room and she saw Bodhi. You didn't have sex with Caitlin. You assaulted her. She waved Caitlin's phone at him. We're taking this to the police, just so you know. They're gonna want to see it. She turned to look at Colton. And go ahead and shoot him if you want to. I don't even care. You think he's the good guy? Bodhi sputtered. Phoenix, please, I told you, forget about the video. Look at her last call. That'll tell you everything. Phoenix, please. Phoenix's eyes filmed over. Part of her was here, but the other part of her had gone. She robotically looked down at the phone. Swiped again. All the energy and motivation that had been fueling her seconds ago was gone. She had been ready for a confrontation today, but hadn't expected her husband to be this kind of evil. All I see is a number. There's no contact, she said in a voice as dull as her eyes. You think people's numbers mean anything to me? I know yours and my mom's, that's it. Read it out loud, Bodhi ordered. Colton was still holding the gun up. Why are you still listening to him? He motioned to the door with his head. You know what? Just go. Get out of here. Oh, now he wants you to leave. You see that? Bodhi grimaced in pain. His breathing was shallow. Read the number out loud. 480-555-2436. Phoenix read it out with no emotion in her voice. My knees went weak. My mouth was instantly dry. So dry I couldn't swallow. At the same time, I wanted to throw up. I recognized the number, because that was one of the only numbers I knew too. My mom's and my husband's. Chapter 16. I turned to Colton. Why were you calling Caitlin? He stared back at me blankly, blinking rapidly. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about? I cried, pointing at Phoenix's hand. That's your number in Caitlin's phone. See? Bodhi exclaimed before Colton had a chance to say anything to me. His face was lined with pain. He set this whole thing up. I should have known it was you. Why does she call you Stan? Is that some kind of code name? Be quiet, Colton said. I could barely formulate thoughts, words, sentences. All I felt was a huge gaping hole opening in my guts. I steadied myself next to the wall because it felt like I'd fall over if I didn't. I was so dizzy and disoriented. Worse than in the bathroom. Phoenix wrapped her arm around me. She was the one to hold me up this time. I don't understand. You're Stan? I shook my head. It hurt too much to let the information inside. This couldn't be real. It wasn't happening. Who's Stan? What does that have to do with this? Phoenix asked, totally bewildered. Colton looked back and forth between us. His Adam's apple bobbed as he worked his jaw. Bodhi interrupted him. You sent me the app. You said no to all my suggestions until I found her profile, said she was the one we should book for the party. He hadn't taken his eyes off Colton. You set this entire thing up. Did you key my car too? Blackmail me? How could you do this to me? Do this to you? Colton angrily shook his head at Bodhi. He was instantly triggered and furious. I'd never seen him so mad. Are you kidding me? You took everything from me, Bodhi. Everything. My parents barely had time for me from the moment you got sick. The whole family was so preoccupied with keeping you alive. Everyone's lives centered around you, and you know what my job was? To act like I didn't exist. To stay out of the way. Fury lit his eyes. The kind of rage that's festered for years. Do you know how many birthdays I missed because of you? Games nobody was at? My mom disappeared to help your mom, and my parents almost split up over it. But you never saw any of that. Or what everyone around you was going through. You never cared about anyone but yourself and what was happening to you. Bodhi burst out laughing, then started wheezing while he spoke. You're still mad about all this shit from when we were kids? I loved her, and you took her away from me, Colton cried. His voice cracked and tears streamed down his face. Was he talking about his mom? Or could he mean Caitlin? Did it matter? Phoenix sank to the floor, like the shock had finally worn off and the weight of the situation had hit her full blast. I knelt beside her. Are you okay? I asked, instantly worried about the babies. She nodded, but she didn't look okay. She looked scared and depleted. Suddenly, the sound of the sirens, finally, in the distance. We all froze. Me next to Phoenix, Colton on top of Bodhi. What was he going to do now? The stranger in front of my face. Colton stared at the gun clutched in his hand like he couldn't believe he was holding it. Then, down at Bodhi, and over at us. His eyes panicked. The sirens grew louder. They were getting closer. I cupped Phoenix's shoulder. She was suddenly shaking. This was almost over. We just had to hold on a few seconds longer. Help was here. Then, like he'd been in a trance and was coming to his senses, Colton just dropped the gun. Nobody moved as it hit the carpeted floor. He finally released his hold on Bodhi, and Bodhi quickly rolled to his side, clutching his stomach while he reached for the gun. Colton flung one more glance over his shoulder at me, and then he just bolted. He ran straight through the hallway and out the back door as the police officers burst into the house. Chapter 17.
Wow, Jenna. I've been doing therapy for decades, so it takes a lot to shock me, but I have to admit, I'm a bit speechless.
Now you understand why I needed an emergency session. I'm so grateful you squeezed me in today. It's been the most stressful week of my life. I don't even know where to begin sorting it all out. I still can't believe Stan was my husband. That he was the one texting Caitlin, and he sent her the video from the party.
I can't imagine what you're going through. I'm so sorry. And I'd never say this to a regular client, of course, but I feel so responsible for what happened. I'm the one that made you look in the mirror and tell yourself that you could trust Colton.
But see, that's the thing. You weren't wrong about him. Neither was I. He's incredibly loyal to the ones he loves, and he loved her. Still does, apparently. His texts to Caitlin were exactly like she described. He's so nice to her. Incredibly kind and supportive. They sound like he really knows her, and in a way he does. Probably better than anyone else. Because he listened to every single one of her therapy sessions.
How awful. Just the thought of someone invading this space and listening to my sessions.
Right? It's like I gave him a key straight into her soul.
Do you have any idea when it all started?
Yes. After the initial shock, I was able to put it together. Last year, while we were separated, he spotted her coming out of one of our sessions when he was at the house grabbing some stuff. That's when he took an interest in her, and it developed into an obsession. It might even be the reason he moved back home. I gave him access to all her records and notes in my office. It also looks like he watched her come and go from our sessions.
It's the perfect plan, really. He must have felt so lucky when his buddy was planning that bachelor party. What a great way to meet her.
Exactly. He expected the two of them to make a connection at the party. Fate. That was all wrapped up in their story, the beautiful synchronicity of the universe. He never imagined Bodhi would hook up with her. At least that's what he thought happened initially, I'm sure. Until he saw the video. Colton was so confident in his connection with Caitlin that he set up the camera in the hotel bedroom, figuring the two of them would be the ones to end up there at the end of the night. The first thing the police did when they got to the scene was to separate all of us. I went through Caitlin's phone while I had it. It's all there. And that's the crazy thing. I think he loved her. Like, really cared about her in his own twisted way.
I still don't understand the video or how any of it worked. So confusing to me.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of it, too. But as far as we can tell right now, he was mad about Bodhi taking away another important moment for him. In the beginning, he was the one texting and threatening Bodhi, pretending to be Caitlin. But then he sent her the video with the kindest message, telling her how much he respected what she did, how sorry he was that Bodhi had done that to her. He sounds kind and loving when he's explaining all of it. What he did, how he set up the video. After that, he sent her Bodhi's name and all of his contact information with a text message that said, "Destroy his life."
And that's the point she started texting Bodhi too?
Yes. In a way, the two of them were working together without knowing it. Colton had no idea that Caitlin was going to ask Bodhi for money, though. You can see that's when it got out of his control. That was all Caitlin. I think he expected they'd be working as a team, that they'd bring justice to him together or something, maybe even end up together in the end despite everything that happened. But Caitlin took matters into her own hands.
How are you holding up?
It's really hard. I'm just taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. Otherwise, it's too overwhelming.
I understand. Do you want to schedule another session at the end of the week?
Definitely. It's going to take me a long time to work through this. Epilogue. I held the papers in my hand as I walked out of the courthouse. Phoenix was waiting for me on the sidewalk, stretched to the absolute max in a new Hatch maternity dress she'd borrowed from one of her friends, on a countdown to deliver the babies. If she didn't go into labor by Wednesday, they'd induce her on Thursday morning. I was her labor coach, and I couldn't wait. I'd never been more excited for a responsibility in my life. Well, is it final? Phoenix asked, tilting her head to the side and giving me a huge grin. Both her hands were on her lower back, her belly out in front of her. It is, I shrieked, gleefully waving the divorce papers in the air. Signed and dated. I twirled in circles before racing over to her and doing a celebratory dance together. It'd been almost 5 months since Bodhi killed Caitlin, and it was amazing how life could change so dramatically in such a short time. Nothing looked the same, beginning with the end of both of our marriages. Phoenix and Bodhi's divorce would take longer because Bodhi was fighting Phoenix on it, and there were unborn children involved. Mine had been quick. With no children, it had only been a matter of drawing up the papers with an attorney and getting them signed. Colton didn't put up a fight. He was desperate to keep everything private, and so deep into his grief over losing Caitlin, he would have done anything to get rid of me. Phoenix and I hooked arms and walked toward the car. We'd parked around the corner. Are your feet tired? I asked. Phoenix hadn't wanted to come inside the courthouse. She'd sat next to me for all the hard parts, but all I was doing today was filing the paperwork with the clerk and getting my official copies. Phoenix had walked the block trying to get herself to go into labor. Tonight, we were having a strawberry vinaigrette salad with extra olive oil for the same reason. Not too bad, Phoenix said. How do you feel? Honestly, I looked over at her. Not sad. Phoenix looked back at me and we burst out laughing, which ironically was how we spent most of our time these days. Our lives had been so dark and so serious for so long. It was nice that the stress of it all was finally over. I mean, I'm sorry for Colton. I actually feel sad for him. He seems like a pathetic little boy to me now, especially after the trial, you know? Phoenix nodded. We'd sat through all of it together. Bodhi had been insistent on pressing charges against Colton for attempted murder on top of the criminal charges filed against him by the state in Caitlin's case. Bodhi's mother paid for his attorneys, both the one they used to put Colton in prison for 10 years, ensuring he did the maximum sentence for attempted murder, aggravated stalking, and felony harassment, and the criminal defense attorney they used for Bodhi to ensure he received the minimum sentence for voluntary manslaughter and sexual assault. Bodhi's defense attorney worked out an amazing 13-year plea bargain, which meant at the end of the day, Bodhi could get out at around the same time as Colton. Somehow, both of them would have plenty of life to live once they got out. Meanwhile, Caitlin would be forever 26. Justice had been served, but not really. We reached the car and I held open the door for Phoenix as she dropped low to get in. We'd been living together since the night of the murder. For the first few weeks, we'd shared the same bed. Both of us were terrified of the images that flashed through our minds when we closed our eyes and tried to sleep. Then, we'd sold each of our respective homes and moved into an apartment on the west side of town. The perfect starting over spot. I used to dream about having my nieces stay with me on the weekends, and now I was going to see them every day. I was going to have the opportunity to help raise them, and it made me feel more alive than I had in years, despite all the loss. Phoenix and I spent every night sitting on the couch, devouring ice cream and cookies, pickles, and whatever other junk food Phoenix happened to be craving at the moment. I had gained 10 pounds since we'd moved in together, but I didn't care. I'd never been happier, which was strange to say given all the tragedy around me. I would never stop feeling guilty about Caitlin. Phoenix and I had put all the pieces together with each other. That was all the first month had been, playing amateur detectives every night when we got off work. I knew we'd be able to figure it out with our powers combined. Who knew Colton harbored such deep resentment toward Bodhi? He'd hidden his childhood secrets so well, always playing the part of Bodhi's most diligent supporter. He'd written essays about his cousin's cancer recovery for his college entrance exams. He'd organized fundraisers and ran half marathons for him. You'd never suspect he'd been seething with anger and jealousy for decades. Colton had been the glass child, and it wasn't lost on anyone that he'd nearly killed his cousin on top of shattered glass. That's what all the papers said about him. People were fascinated with their story. It'd been so painful watching Colton unravel on the stand. His own aunt had paid for the best attorney to defend Bodhi. The whole family leaving Colton to fend for himself. Even his parents seemed to take Bodhi's side, still seeing him as that desperate little boy. It made me question everything I'd ever believed about my in-laws, especially when Bodhi had undeniably assaulted a woman. My heart broke for Colton, and I knew he had a bad lawyer when she let him testify on his own behalf. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, bleary-eyed and unshaven, like an alcoholic who'd gone too many days without a drink as he rambled on about his love affair with Caitlin. He talked about sending her the video like he'd done it to help her, to be her hero. Except if he really cared about her, he would have given the video to the police as soon as he saw it, or wouldn't have recorded it without her consent to begin with. It was hard to know his plans. When he decided to start torturing Bodhi, what his endgame had been. That was the one part of the story Colton wouldn't talk about. Pretending to be Lexus. But he didn't need to. The prosecution had all his phone records showing the messages. So did I. I didn't know the man he was in his communication to Caitlin. He talked to her like they were committed, loving partners. None of his messages were disturbing out of context. Until you realize none of them were reciprocated. He still pretended they'd been in a relationship together, working as a team to take down Bodhi. But even though he'd sent her the video and she'd used it to blackmail Bodhi, she remained silent up until the end, never responding to him outside of the first text, when she told him he had the wrong number. She was such a smart and strong woman. Colton seemed like a stranger as I read the hundreds of messages they put on the screen during his trial. Leaving him had been the easiest part of the aftermath. That had been the biggest surprise in all of this. I no longer had to wait for the other shoe to drop. It hadn't just dropped. It had thundered down, changing everything. And oddly enough, I felt a huge measure of relief. I didn't have to wait for the bad thing to happen anymore. I could finally go on with my life. In some strange way, all of this had set me free. I'd lost my husband, sure, but I'd gained a sister, something I'd been wanting for a lot longer. And sometimes, the greatest love story, it doesn't have to be romantic.
This is a Safe Space, a thriller, was written by Lucinda Berry and performed by Danielle Savory with Alicia Crowder, Dan Bittner, Matt Godfrey, and Janina Edwards. It was recorded by Hugo Durand at Benzin Studio in Paris and by Zach Tyson at Dave and Dave in Los Angeles. Editing, mix, and post-production by like 2,000 pounds. Elisa Morales was the associate producer. The story editor was Lara Blackman. This is a Safe Space was produced and directed by Allison Light. This has been a presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio Originals. Also available from Simon & Schuster Audio Originals, One of Our Own, written by Lucinda Berry and read by A.J. Cook with Tessa Albertson.
The following is an excerpt from Lucinda Berry's One of Our Own, a thriller, read by A.J. Cook and Tessa Albertson.
National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, this is Felicia. It's okay. I'm here. You're not alone. You're okay. Can you tell me your name and where you're calling from? Hello? I'm hearing some traffic around you. Are you safe? Can you tell me where you are? Are you in danger?
Please, help me.
Are you in danger?
I can't do this. I just can't do this anymore. I can't go to school tomorrow.
How come you can't go to school? What's going on there?
Oh my God. There's a video. I can't believe there's a video. They recorded it. I didn't know. I'm totally naked. They're sending it around and everyone's seen it.
It sounds like you're in a lot of pain, and I want to help you. You don't have to go through this alone, okay? You're not alone. I've got you. But first, I just have to ask you some questions to make sure you're safe. Is that okay?
Yes.
Are you currently having thoughts about harming yourself or not wanting to be alive?
Yes.
Do you have a plan?
Yes.
Can you tell me about it?
My dad has a gun. And I know the combination to the safe. So that's how I got it, but I've never used a gun before. I don't know if I'll do it right. What if I do it wrong? What if I screw it up like I screw everything else up? That's all I keep thinking about. Like, what if I do this and it doesn't work? What if I blow half my face off and have to live that way? Or I paralyze myself somehow so I'm stuck, like, trapped inside my body and I can't try again? What if I don't die? I don't know how to shoot a gun.
Do you have the gun with you?
Yes,
And where are you right now?
I'm at the park.
A park? It's very late. Are other people there with you?
I'm alone. It's just me, I think.
Can I ask why you're at the park?
Because I didn't want my parents to be the ones to find me. I couldn't do that to them. It would destroy my mom.
That was thoughtful of you. It sounds like you really care about your parents. Have you tried to talk to them about how you're feeling?
Are you kidding me? They'll want to know what happened, and I can't tell them that. It's so humiliating. No way, I can't.
It's okay. It's okay. Do you want to tell me what happened? Sometimes our callers find it helpful to talk about what's on their minds, especially if they can't talk about it with the people that are closest to them. I'm just here to listen, not to judge you. It sounds like the pain feels so intense that you're thinking of...
I'm not thinking about it. I'm going to do it. I'm just scared I'm not going to do it right.
Okay, I hear you. But I just want to point out, you did call me before doing anything, so there must be a small part of you that doesn't want to do this, that wants to stay alive. Don't you think? Can we try to talk to that part of you?
I know it hurts a lot right now and feels like there's no way out, but I really believe I can help you. If you let me.
You can't help me. Nobody can.
Sweetie, I understand you don't see any hope right now, but I do. And not just because I'm trying to make you feel better. I've been through a really dark period in my life, too. I know what it's like to feel hopeless and alone. But what if I told you that you wouldn't always feel this way? That this experience, whatever happened, whatever you went through, did not have to destroy you. What if you knew in 3 months or a year, you'd feel better, and whatever you're feeling right now would be gone?
That's not going to happen. I'm never going to feel better. Besides, even if I do feel better, everything's ruined. My life is over. You don't know what it's like at my school. Everyone at Buckley is so fake and phony. They all just talk about each other behind their backs, and now they'll never stop talking about me.
I'm sorry, did you say Buckley? Buckley Preparatory High School?
You know it? I thought this was like a random counselor or something.
Sure, I do. You know how you got that message in the beginning saying your call was being routed to the nearest center?
Mm-hmm.
988 is a national hotline. It's staffed by people at call centers around the country. When someone calls, the system logs them by their area code and then sends them to their local area so we can help them find resources close to them. Wouldn't do any good if I offered you a place to get counseling in Arizona if you live in New York. So, yes, I'm familiar with Buckley, but I'm also familiar with the other schools in the area. I just recognized the...
Oh my God, someone's coming. I've got to get out of here. They're coming.
Who is? Do you know them? Are you in danger? Please, just stay on the line. Can you stay on the line with me? Stay on the line with me. Just stay on the line.
I have to go. I have to go.
Please, let me help you. I can help you. Tell me where you are. I'll get you help. Don't hang up.
I can't. I've got to go.
Listen, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Are you listening? Please put the safety on the gun. Do you know how to do that? And then I want you to get to a safe place. Can you get to a safe place? That's all you have to do. Take down my number, okay? Can you do that? I'm giving you my cell so you can contact me directly. Please just stop and put my number in your phone. It's 608-333-9982. Did you put it in your phone? Put it in your phone, 608-333-9982. Honey, are you there? Are you safe? Please, just answer. I jumped up from my desk and whipped around, searching for my supervisor, Philip. He was already racing toward me with his headset wrapped around his shoulders. The cord dangled behind him. He must have yanked it right out of his computer. What in the hell were you thinking? He screamed at me, waving his hands around. You can't give a caller your personal phone number. That's what you're worried about right now? I grabbed his arm and pointed at my computer monitor. We have to get her back on the line. How do we get her back? Did you call 911? I thought you were supposed to be calling 911. The moment she mentioned a gun, I messaged him that we had a potential caller in need of emergency services, and he jumped on the line per our protocol. We were the 911 of mental health, but sometimes, in cases like this, we had to call the real deal. He shook his head and shoved me aside. He leaned over my computer and frantically typed, pulling up the call data while he talked. I didn't have her on the line long enough to track her. Unlike 911, we didn't have the capability to track people's locations when they called in. Complete anonymity was exactly why the call center worked. What are we going to do, Philip? What are we going to do? This had been my biggest fear since I started volunteering at the center 2 years ago. Someone hurting themselves while they were on the line with me. And it's not like it hadn't happened. Sometimes people were in real physical danger by the time they called us. They'd already taken a bunch of pills or were in the middle of hurting themselves. And this girl wasn't just a threat to herself. She was armed, and it sounded like someone was chasing her, too. Did you hear her say they were coming? He ignored me and continued working. Elaine rushed to join us, and she stood next to me, putting her arm around my waist. We were the only ones working that night, since Sean had called in sick, and I was glad to have her by my side. We weren't just colleagues. She was one of my closest friends, too. "I'm sorry," she said. She was actually the one that was supposed to take this call, but she'd been on a break, so I grabbed it for her. "It's okay," I replied as the data finally loaded in the queue. It's not like she passed off a difficult caller on purpose. We never had any idea what was coming. The dialog box opened on my screen. I quickly unplugged my headset so we could all hear it and turned up the volume on my speakers. The three of us barely breathed as we listened, straining for any clues to who the girl was, where she could be now, or other things I might have missed in the moment. My knees went weak and my heart stilled in all the same places, especially when she mentioned Buckley Preparatory School. It was just as shocking hearing it the second time, even though I knew it was coming. It just reinforced how close this one hit home. My son, Hunter, was a junior at the same high school.